The Midnight Ocean digs deep into the world of modern archaeology.
What will you decide to believe? The evidence and the Bible?
With the Maverick archaeologist, Judkins.
This will change everything.
He's been all over the world.
Everything we have been taught in history.
He's dug in some of the deepest holes and climbed atop some of the highest mountains.
We're the only team in 3 years has permission to be on air rest to dig.
Leading excavations that prove the biblical timeline.
When the Ark is revealed, it will be a testament frozen in time.
Exhuming evidence that decimates evolution.
If this is true, man and dinosaur were created on day number 6.
Some of the most fascinating stories of exploration you'll ever hear.
It'll change geology.
An in-depth interview.
It'll change biology and zoology.
With Judkins.
It'll change all the ologies.
Live tonight on The Midnight Ocean.
We don't get that in church. They don't teach you that stuff. Let the evidence speak for themselves. Don't tell people what to believe. Show them.
That is right. We're going to show you guys tonight. We got Dr. Aaron Judkins going to be joining us talking about biblical archaeology. That is a fascinating topic. It is going to set some people on fire, I'm sure, and confirm what people already believe. So I can't wait after that intro, after that little quick segment that Dr. Aaron put together for us for the show tonight is going to definitely be interesting. This is one that you probably need to tell your friends and your family to tune in if you have not done so already. It's going to be a good one. Going to be a good one. Welcome, Sentinel. I'm just going to use your half name. I'm not Samaritan Sentinel. Welcome to the group. Those in a YouTube land. As we grow our audience out there, we're already up to about 120 subscribers in a matter. It's amazing. They say once you hit your first 100, then it just goes leaps and bounds from there. And I actually do believe them. We're also doing something a little bit new here, not necessarily on the site, but in social media. We do have our Google Plus page synced up. So all of you Google Plus people out there, and we're going to bring in the Hangouts. We're going to start using that product a little bit more so we can get kind of a conference call going as I get distracted from chat, from the chat room. But all of those people that are out there who are not on YouTube chat, you can actually join into the chat. I tell people that it's half the show because of the conversation. That is the only chat window that I use during the show. I don't use Spreakers. I don't use Facebook's IM. I don't use any of those. The only one that I use and monitor during the show is the YouTube chat. And the reason being is it's easy to moderate because I have moderators. I have fellow crew members who will keep you on the straight and on the narrow. And you definitely do not want to walk the gangplank with those guys. There is no coming back, no redemption. And that's right, you are listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, just in case I forgot to tell you that, if you already didn't know. And you can join us here every weeknight from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. If you want to speak with me during the day, during normal business hours, the best way to do that is to get out there on Facebook and join us there. Do a search for the Midnight Ocean or Midnight Listeners, and also on Google Hangout. That is the other way of communicating with me directly. If this is your first time wondering or finding us on YouTube, make sure that you hit that ever so more important. I can't say that again. Let's try this again. If you are out on YouTube for the first time, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. There you go. Keep it simple, stupid. No reason to fluff it up with a lot of words. Just hit that subscribe button. I promise you, we're not going to spam you. It will only tell you when new shows are coming down the pipe, which are actually 5 shows a week, because we are live Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, for those that didn't get it the first time. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. I hope your day today went well. Mine was weird. I had one of those moments where I just couldn't get up. I woke up at my normal time early in the morning with only a couple hours of sleep, took care of a little bit of business, and Miss Sandy was so gracious enough to let me sleep the rest of the day so I could be rested for the show. And I'm ready to go. I should go get my Stetson. That's right. Dr. Aaron Judkins is going to be joining. He is, I would have to say, he is the Indiana Jones, but he wears a Stetson instead. So he's a modern day Indiana Jones in a Stetson. But wait a minute, I think didn't Indiana Jones wear a Stetson? I think it was a Stetson hat. It just was the type of hat. Indiana Jones in a cowboy hat. There you go. Indiana Jones in a cowboy hat. So we look forward to that conversation here in a few minutes. Getting back to today, man, just chilled out. Took it easy. Caught up a little bit on my sleep and everything. You know, I was thinking I might have a psychic vampire on me. Maybe I need to call one of my guests, one of my friends, to see what is going on. Just have not had a whole lot of energy the past couple months. More and more. I know it might be the obvious of the hours that I keep doing fedora. That's right. He had a fedora. You are right, Sentinel. He had a fedora. But I think it was made by Stetson. And a Stetson now is kind of like Escalator. It's become, even though it's a name brand, it's become synonymous with cowboy hats. So people just say Stetson. I don't know. I have to go back and look at that. Talk about going back and looking at that tonight. Watching a little Weird Science. You remember that song that show with Anthony Michael Hall? Weird Science. That was awesome. Brought back some memories. And thoroughly enjoyed watching that show with the lovely Miss Sandy. And of course I had to cut it short to get in here, so I didn't see the plot line. I already know the plot line. I think I've seen that show a few times in the past. So, you know, it's one of those things where not much going on. I mean, you know, you have everything that's going on in the elections, but we're trying to stay away from that mess, even though it is our country. But it is quite the mess. Yes, it is. Did you happen to see, though, I do want to bring this up. You know that video where they show Hillary Clinton leaving, where she's being basically carried and put into the van, poured into the van? Kind of looks like a bachelor party gone wrong, or actually gone right in many cases. She is being poured into the van. And, you know, you don't wish ill will. Well, yeah, maybe you do. On anybody. It's just not very Christian of us. I'm one of these people that I've learned not to hold grudges anymore, just turn it over and let God deal with it. Right? It's not my deal. Not my place anymore. Just move on. But the concerning part is if you look very close to her pant leg, there is a metal object that falls out of her leg. I'm almost wanting, you know, I've heard rumors that she has a Foley catheter. And if she has seizures, that would be, you know, if she has those types of muscle issues, if she tend to have seizures around loud noises and stuff, that is very possible that she could lose bodily fluid control. Could happen. It's a medical condition. So, you know, even though it's happening to her, it's still a medical condition and quite serious if you think about it in some regard. considering that it's the seizures that are causing, not incontinence. But this weekend I was watching the video and you can clearly see a metal piece actually fall out of her pant leg. And it looks like some kind of support. It looks kind of like not a strut, but some kind of metal support. Take a look at that video. Let me know what you think. You have to look down at the bottom right hand and you can zoom into it. It's the one where you're off to her right. Her back is facing you, off to your right. Not the one off to your left. Not the longer video, but the shorter video. But there is something obviously being ejected from her pant leg. Could be some kind of brace, maybe. I don't know. That's what I think it would be. So take a look at it. And, you know, and the other thing is I think Donald Trump is becoming a little bit more presidential. Normally he would have jumped all over that. Instead, he said, I hope she feels better. Maybe he knows something that we don't know. Maybe he knows the end of the road is near. But it was very, very strange. So on the cryptozoology side, Bigfoot encounter in the Pennux National Wildlife Research Refuge. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that I found a collection of early eyewitness reports and encounters interviews that I had not posted on the blog. The following account was among those uncovered, and that comes from phantomsandmonsters.com. So we are starting to see a little bit more cryptozoology news pop in. Just before sunset on September 24th, 2002, I had been fishing at the Cache Lake fishing area in the north side of the lake. I had packed up and started to walk towards my car. I noticed movement in the small woods near our route 197. Turn off on Old Laurel Brownie Road. I thought it may have been a small herd of deer. As I was loading my truck, I heard a loud grunt come from the woods. I turned around and saw what I could only describe as a Bigfoot. It was at least 7 feet tall and covered in reddish brown hair all around. It was standing with its legs apart. It appeared to be upset and taking a menacing stance. I then saw more movement behind the Bigfoot, whatever it was. I believe it may have been a juvenile. Was hanging on the back of its arm, draped around the Bigfoot neck. Around the Bigfoot's neck. I didn't get a very good look at the juvenile, but I am quite sure that is what I saw. The Bigfoot grunted again and looked directly at me. I was probably about 200 feet from me, but the remaining sunlight illuminated the beast. I hurried into my car, started it, and drove off. I was definitely scared. I mentioned my sighting to a friend who often fishes with me. His eyes widened and his mouth dropped open. He told me that his son had seen something similar a week before at Cache Lake. My friend didn't believe his son and just brushed it off. So that is coming from a Bigfoot encounter at Patuxent. That's spelled Patuxent National Wildlife Research Refuge. Wow. I can't imagine. I mean, I was from northern Michigan. My dad was stationed up there, and I spent many a times in the woods hiking to various fishing holes. Yes, I was known to skip school to go fishing or skiing during the winter. And I can tell you that I can't imagine what it would be like to come across a Bigfoot. Now, I've come across bears in the Smoky Mountains, and I've come across wolves and wild dogs in the Smoky Mountains. And that's scary enough. I mean, that's very scary. we actually, a good friend of mine, Sean, used to do a lot of hiking and mountaineering together when we were younger. We're hiking up at Cumberland's Gap in Tennessee in the Smokies. And we had what they call an MSR bottle, which is a fuel. You put your fuel for your MSR stove. And we had that thing pressurized, and we didn't store it in the tent or anything. But apparently one of us forgot to let the pressure off of it. And we left it outside our tent. Well, that night, something apparently, baking grease or something got on it food-wise. And we didn't have it up in the bear locker. In other words, you hang it from a tree away from your campsite. And so we heard the bear. Sean's in his tent and I'm in my tent. And we're both like whispering to each other, Sean, do you hear that? It's like, yeah. And we hear him like tussling our gear around. And we're like, oh, crap. Got to deal with this bear. Well, needless to say, we heard this large explosion. Boom. This bear apparently got into one of our pressurized MSR bottles and bit into it. And it didn't kill the bear or anything because there was no carcass laying around. But it sure in the heck scared the bejesus out of him and scared the bejesus out of us because there was no more bear to be found. The MSR bottle is actually, I don't know if it's still there, but it's Cumberland Bike in, I want to say 2nd Avenue. It's right on it's in downtown Nashville. We actually took it. That's where we bought all of our North Face gear, all of our camping and hiking and climbing gear. And so we brought it in there and stored it or gave it to them. And it has the puncture marks in it from the T-Spare where he literally bit into the steel container. These bottles are like miniature scuba tanks. They're made out of steel because you pressurize them. And they're made to, you can burn kerosene, any type of fuel, gasoline, diesel, anything will burn in these things. They are the ultimate survival stove. It's called MSRs. Highly recommend those. Those need to be in everybody's bug out bag because, like I said, they will burn any type of fuel. Never burn diesel or gasoline in them, but they will burn those types of fuels as well. So that was my experience with a bear. Now, of course, you see them all the time. You know what's really amazing? I live in the great state of Florida. This show is produced live from the Nature's Coast. I've seen more bears, wild bears down here than I've ever seen in Florida, than I've ever seen anywhere else. These are wild bears on the side of the road. We'll be driving through the Ocala National Forest, and they'll just be sitting there on the side of the road looking at cars going by. It's kind of funny. I always got to do my, hey, boo-boo, where's my picnic basket? When I see them. So good times. Good times. Do I think that a lot of these supposed Bigfoot sightings are actual bears? I think some of them could be. If a bear stands on its hind end, especially a brown bear, not necessarily a black bear, but a brown bear stands up on its hind legs, it will get 8 to 9 feet tall. And they can stand up there. They're not like a dog in the sense where they stand up for a little bit. They can stand up for quite a long time on their hind legs. So, who knows? But I can only imagine. It would scare the bejesus out of me. It is not a creature that I would want to encounter. Talk about wolves. We talk about upright wolf encounter. in Homer's Gap, Peoria. So apparently a resident illuminated 8 to 9 foot upright wolf described as looking the same as the lichens in the movie Underworld. Whoa. How would you like to meet that? I'd take a Bigfoot any day. Than a wolf. Wolves are scary creatures. We've had plenty of run in Cumberland Gap up in the Great Smokies. That was actually a gray wolf refuge center. So they would trap the wolves out in the plains and they would bring them over to the Smokies. And wolves are big animals. They're not like your normal shepherds or dogs. They're quite a bit bigger. And they have no fear of man. So that is another one. Just perusing the news here. Oh, one thing that I did want to talk about yesterday that I didn't get to because I just ran out of time. This whole thing about the internet. And you might be asking, well, what about the internet, Jeff? Well, I'm going to tell you. So last week, the United States gave up control over the ICANN system or DNS system. DNS system is basically the central routing point. So when you type in the Midnight Ocean into your web browser, that actually gets translated into a series of numbers, or what they call IP addresses. And each computer has a unique IP address. So it's kind of like your mailbox, right? So what we have done is that we've given up control of that. And now it is kind of out there in limbo. There's no government regulation over it. Well, the problem is this. If there's no government regulation, then it's a monopoly. Because if only one company can do it, then it's by definition a monopoly. So what I think is going to happen is that the ICANN system is going to be sued as a monopoly under the EU. If it gets sued, it's going to have one or two options. You're going to have country-based DNS systems. So that means each government in each country can control the traffic. So if a country doesn't like my show, they can send you to a show that they like. If a government doesn't like your position in something, they can block you. Now, what is going on with the ICANN is we need to be watching that, because the only other way that they can have one control so that those things don't happen is it's going to have to fall under a government agency. And it looks like the United Nations is going to be that government agency. So we'll definitely have to take a look at that, kind of watch it to see, because I think censorship, internet censorship, regardless of who is in control, is coming down the pipe. But don't you worry, we have ways to communicate with you. Talking about communication, our next guest that's going to be joining us is Dr. Aaron Judkins. He is the Maverick archaeologist. Look forward to this conversation. Tell your friends, tell your families. But you are listening to the Midnight Ocean radio show and podcast. Join us here every weeknight from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web, www.themidnightocean.com.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
Tonight, the Midnight Ocean digs deep into the world of modern archaeology.
What will you decide to believe? The evidence and the Bible?
With the Maverick archaeologist, Aaron Judkins.
This will change everything.
He's been all over the world.
Everything we have been taught in history.
He's dug in some of the deepest holes and climbed atop some of the highest mountains.
We're the only team in 3 years has permission to be on Ararat to dig.
Leading excavations that prove the biblical timeline.
When the Ark is revealed, it will be a testament frozen in time.
Exhuming evidence that decimates evolution.
If this is true, man and dinosaur were created on day number 6.
Some of the most fascinating stories of exploration you'll ever hear.
It'll change geology.
An in-depth interview.
It'll change biology and zoology.
With Aaron Judkins.
It'll change all the ologies.
Live tonight on the Midnight Ocean.
We don't get that in church. They don't teach you that stuff. Let the evidence speak for themselves. Don't tell people what to believe. Show them.
That is right, listeners. You're listening to the Midnight Ocean radio show and podcast. And wow, we got a very special guest. One that I've been trying to get on the show for a little bit, for quite a while, for the short month. He was the first one that I reached out to, trying to get him on the show and talk about forbidden biblical archaeology. And on the line, we have Dr. Aaron Maverick Judkins. Hi, Dr. Judkins. How are you? And welcome to the show.
I'm doing great.
I feel like
I'm doing great.
I feel like after that intro, I need to do it. Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get ready to rumble.
I do.
I don't mind having good debates, but I really enjoy talking about this passion that I have about exposing archaeology, just bringing it to light where people can simply understand it, but let them make up their own minds. So that's what I'm about. I get out in the field and get dirty and bring all the information back to you so you can take a look at it.
And that's awesome. And you are not a classic. You are not a classroom archaeologist. You are definitely in the field, digging and probing and getting dirty with your cowboy hat.
Yeah. I've always describe myself as a field archaeologist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever have watched Indiana Jones, but when he's going through the, they're on the motorcycle and they're going through the library and they're starting to crash and they're going through the tables and chairs and then they kind of come to a stop and the kids are all looking at him. They get up on the bike and he goes, "If you want to be a good archaeologist, you got to get out of the library."
That's right.
And there's a place for library and books and classrooms, but there's it's a whole different thing when you get out in the field.
Exactly.
That's what I like to do.
Are you tenured anywhere? Are you affiliated with the university or no?
No, I chose to be outside of that system.
Yeah.
I do have a adjunct professorship with a Millennium Bible Institute, but I try not to get myself into a box.
Yeah.
And that's really where my nickname came in, Maverick Archaeologist, because I chose to be outside that system for a reason. And once you get in the system, it's very hard to swim upstream.
Oh, absolutely.
Without causing a lot of waves. And look, a lot of tenured professors, good archaeologists and geologists and scientists have done that, not realizing maybe the implications of what they were bringing to the table, and this has caused them to lose their careers. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that I take lightly, but to affect change, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go that route. For me, the right thing to do is to stay outside the system, because I don't have anyone telling me, okay, we're going to support you here, we're not going to support you here. Sure. You can't go say that. You can't go do this. That tends to be problematic when you're in universities and you're really going, against the grain. The archaeology I do is so out of the box that a lot of archaeologists that are what I call secular archaeologists just don't go do what I do. Mm-hmm. They have their own thing, but they're locked into that. And matter of fact, when I was shooting for Finding Noah, that was a real life documentary that chronicles our expedition up Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey. Mm-hmm. And we were all training and preparing to go on this, major scientific exploration for Noah's Ark. Probably the single greatest scientific endeavor to date. And about 3 months later, the documentary film crew came on who ended up filming Finding Noah. We didn't know those guys were going to be around doing that. So, 3 months later, they said, we want to come on and film. So the reason we were there is not for the film crew. No one knew about the film crew, but later on they showed up. But I can tell you that there was archaeologists who said, I just can't believe they're going up Mount Ararat to search for Noah's Ark. Mm-hmm. And I get asked that question quite a bit. So, this is an archaeology. I guess it's a part of the field that gets really brushed under the rug.
Oh, correct.
No one wants to talk about this stuff because we're talking about out of place artifacts. We're talking Noah's Ark. We're talking, Paleo Hebrew script and Phoenician stuff in America. These guys don't know what to do with any of it. Yeah. Now, some of it may, my thing is I need to go investigate these things. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm an advocate for all of it. It is what it is, but I'm certainly going to go and check it out and find out what the truth is.
Well, I mean, I've been fascinated. Let me back up. I've been fascinated with archaeology from day one. When I think the first book I ever read was Lucy, and that was when we were in Arizona. My dad was stationed in Arizona. Of course, Arizona State had a huge archaeology program, and my parents were cool enough that they would make sure that we would go out to the mesa and we would see the city inside the cliffs. I forgot I was young, so I don't know the name, but I remember the city that was built into the side of the cliffs and a lot of the ancient.
You're talking about Mesa Verde in southwest Colorado.
Yeah, so we would. I mean, my parents were always like that. They always made sure that we were engulfed in our past history, and so it was so I was fascinated by it. But the thing that turned me away from it was the fact that it was, what everybody told me, oh, you're going to have to spend 20 years in school and you're never going to get out and you're never going to dig and you're never going to, do that. So I kind of stepped away from it. And then the Indiana Jones came out and I was like, oh, I've already made my career choice kind of
right.
thing. So I'm envious.
It's never too late. And I tell people all the time, it's never too late to pursue your passion.
Yeah.
Just go for it. You don't have to be a tenured professor to do it. You don't have to be a scientist in a lab coat. The science is about questioning the unknown. Mm-hmm. And it could be where we came from, life origins, the mysteries of the past. We seek to answer questions because it's unknown to us. We don't know all the answers. Yeah. And anyone should be able to do that. Anyone should be able to ask questions and seek out the truth for themselves. Where academia is good at is in the research and the scholarship that is brought to the table and to help vet, the data. That's what we need. But then there's a disadvantage of that too, where the data gets controlled and sometimes it's never ever released to the public.
Yeah.
And so they don't tell you a lot of things that, it's just if you knew everything there was to know about, Lucy, well, it would make you question the validity of that find. That's Australopithecus afarensis. It's supposedly 3.2 million years old. Some say, initially it was the holy grail of evolution. But there's things that when you look into this and you think, wait a minute, I wasn't told, that the bones for Lucy were, separated, that some of them were not even found at the same location. And how they took Lucy's hip, and because Lucy had a different shaped hip, that the scientist, now you tell me if this is good science or not, but the scientist, and this was on, I think it was either Nova or National Geographic, and I can't remember. It's one of those two, but it showed them, the scientist with the Dremel tool, and he was reshaping the hip to make it look like it was more bipedal, where it would walk upright, in an upright stance.
See, I never knew that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling because they're calling that science. He's reshaping the hip.
Yeah.
To make it look like that she was more bipedal, standing upright.
See, I never ever.
That's. I know. I didn't know that for a long time either. But you start digging into these things, and then you wonder, well, why? What else have they not told us? What else have they, taken and kind of locked in the basements? There's some great examples. Even if we go back to the fresh red blood cells in dinosaur bone, this was a discovery made by Dr. Mary Schweitzer, and she sliced some dinosaur bone, and she took a thin slice and she put it, in solution, and she was looking at it, and much to her surprise, there was soft tissue and red blood cells that were not fossilized. They were pliable. And she did what any good scientist would do. She repeated the experiment, right? Because you have to predict and observe, repeat, and then you try to come to some sort of conclusion, but then you try to falsify, the data. You try to falsify it and see if you can get different results. If they're inconsistent,
sure,
the data is falsified, then you have to start at square one. And she repeated these exams, these tests on the dinosaur bone multiple times, and it takes several weeks for this to get in solution and to go through the process. And so it was a very lengthy process when she did her experiments on this dinosaur bone, and it turns out that the data was consistent. Fresh tissue, pliable, red blood cells, they're not fossilized, and dinosaur bone that's supposedly 65 million years old. Now this is outlandish, because if you're a paleontologist, and your theory is that dinosaurs died out 65 million years, but how do you account for fresh tissue, connective tissue, soft tissue that's pliable, elastic, unfossilized, with red blood cells?
Well,
how do you account for that?
Well, didn't they just uncover a mammoth in Siberia or up in Russia? They just uncovered a mammoth. They said when they cut into it, it actually bled.
Now mammoths are not fossilized. I've dug a couple of mammoths here in Texas. Those guys are not fossilized. They, matter of fact, in most cases, at least here in Texas, the farmers hit them with their plows, and they think it's a big tree root. It's the same color of the dirt. It looks like a big tree root, but it's a big tusk. Usually is what they hit first. And so those things are so fragile, they're not fossilized. Same in Siberia. They've been, flash frozen in place. Well, mammoths weren't. These guys did not live in cold environments.
Yeah.
They were. They they lived in a very different environment.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they found fresh tropical vegetation frozen in their stomachs. There's a great one on display, I think in Siberia, that they found. It's almost completely intact, the Siberian mammoth. These guys, the ecology of the earth changed somehow, some way, and what was probably a tropical environment turned into a frozen wasteland very suddenly. Mm-hmm. They found fish in a stream frozen, a school of fish frozen in place, rock solid, as if they were just going along their normal routine, and then they've been flash frozen in place. Something happened in the past that turned the poles on their ends.
Well, the poles actually, I mean, I'm a pilot and I'm also a sailor. So we get updated charts all the time where your magnetic north does fluctuate, and it does move quite a bit. And it's on the move right now. I think they're actually the prediction is that we are way overdue. You hear this all the time. We're way overdue for the great earthquake. We're way overdue for a polar shift. We're way overdue for a lot of things. And it's concerning. It's very concerning. But yeah, you can go online now and Google and say magnetic north and track it, and it's fluctuating. It's moving pretty quickly. It was actually moving to one direction, to Great Britain, and now it's moving back in the other direction, and so they think that it's starting to oscillate. So that's kind of concerning, and that would explain the freeze. Yeah, they were saying that Antarctica is at one time was probably lush green, and now it's frozen, and you've got something like 9 or 10 Sears Towers in depth as far as ice goes before you actually hit land there. It's just amazing. Yeah, I mean, your field of study is just it's intriguing because you get to dig into the past and you get to see things, and you probably more so than we here in the general populace probably see and appreciate the sophistication of our ancestors. Because, we think that there were stone-throwing Neanderthals, and I think most archaeologists that I talked to were like, no, they're pretty sophisticated, and they did things with less that we still couldn't do today, to this day.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. They were much smarter than we are. Those pictures we've grown up with in our heads about those caveman and Neanderthals and how primitive they were. That's a false image. Those guys painted. They enjoyed artwork.
Yes.
They buried their dead. They made jewelry. They made tools. These guys were smart. Mm-hmm. We know in the ancient past that people were much smarter. There's just no question. I've been around the world studying ancient megalithic sites in Peru and Bolivia and Egypt, and we still don't know how they did this. It's an amazing feat that they've accomplished. So there's so many questions that still have to be answered. The great thing about archaeology is that we take one new finding, or we take a new piece of information, we add it to the building blocks, and what I call the mosaic of the puzzle, and you put another piece in, and you step back, and it starts telling you a picture, and the greater picture is that we're not the pinnacle of evolution. As a matter of fact, I don't believe in evolution as they teach it. Mm-hmm. And the macroevolution, what I call pond scum to Einstein, that never happened. They teach it as if it were fact, but there's evidence that shows that there's not this pond scum to Einstein, mm-hmm. that life could not evolve from non-life. It's called the law of biogenesis, meaning that life has to come from life, and it has to come from an intelligence greater than itself. Mm-hmm. But how do you account not just for life? Well, what about the creatures in the sea, and the fowls, and the insects and the reptiles, the plants, the trees? You have life that, how in the world, when you're looking at it through a symbiotic relationship, you take the bees out of the picture, man, we're in a hurt.
Yeah.
Right? The bees have such an important job.
Yes.
That that's why you hear reports of, they're concerned about the bee population dying because, without the bees, we don't have food. They don't cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
We go into a serious hurt. So we have to depend on symbiotic relationships. And if evolution were true, then how does any of this stuff work? If you got to wait for 1 million years for a bee to come along to pollinate the flower, well, look, none of that's going to work. It's got to make sense. Yep. And when you look at it, at least in my mind, it screams design. And if it has design, there's got to be a designer behind it.
Correct.
So I'm this is conclusions I've come to for myself, and I've studied this for years. I used to believe in evolution. I went through a secular public school. I was taught evolution. But it never made sense to me how all this came about. Now, look, you get a professor, they're going to, they'll tell you, they'll whistle the tune, and they're very good at it. They know how to do it. But when you challenge them on the basis of just scientific reason, it begins to fall apart.
Yeah.
I tell you, there's a great movie. I'll just mention this real quick. A documentary called it was what was that thing? It was called it was Ben Stein's film, and it was called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed.
Okay.
Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. Okay. Ben Stein did a fabulous job on this because he basically just was neutral and posed questions. Tell me why you would, went to Richard Dawkins. Why do you tell me one solid proof of evolution? The film was very eye-opening, and if you haven't seen that film, you should, because it tells you exactly where they stand, and it's really an empty theory.
Well, I mean, my whole thing for evolution, and I understand, Galapagos and all that, but my very simplistic, I was having to explain evolution to someone, and I couldn't get it across to him. I finally said, "Look, see that wall over there? And we just got a wall painted." And I said, "See that wall over there that's painted?" It's like, "Yes." I said, "When that sits in the sun for 2 or 3 years, it's going to fade, right?" It's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, that's evolution. I didn't create a new species. I just took something that was there, and it, because of the elements or whatever, it changed a little bit. But the species, the underlying paint, was still that paint. It just, because of sun, because of whatever. But I didn't actually create anything. It just morphed."
And here's my challenge to that. When people say, "What is evolution?" I have to ask, please define your term.
Yeah.
Because are you talking about macroevolution, pond scum to Einstein, or are you talking about microevolution, which is horizontal change, variation, adaptation, mutation, which I fully believe there is a microevolutionary process called change, adaptation, mutation. Mm-hmm. These things happen. It's a process of change. And if you define evolution as microevolution, then yes, I would agree. Mm-hmm. But when you try to insert a pond scum to Einstein in that microevolutionary definition, well, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Because after all, you have to have a wall. Where did the wall come from?
Yeah, you had to have a wall. You had to have the base. Where did
the paint come from?
Exactly.
So it doesn't answer those questions.
Yep.
The wall is there. The paint's there. But why is it there? Who put it there? Who made it? Why isn't it there, how come there's no answers for that? And that's where we're at with life.
Exactly.
The wall, is here. But then we look at it and we're going, okay, well, we can see it changing, adaptation, mutations. Look, genetic mutations are not good. They're always harmful.
Yeah.
They don't make it better.
They don't make it better.
Well, they make it worse.
Dr. Junkin,
so these are processes that
hate to cut you off, my friend, but we are at a hard break here. So we'll take a quick break for 4 minutes. We'll come back and we'll continue the conversation. Okay. All right, sir. So we are talking with Dr. Aaron Judkins. I think we're on the same page. I'm in good company here tonight at the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. Join us on the web at www.themidnightocean.com.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
Yes, it is, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join us here every Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. And tonight, joining us on the line, we have Dr. Aaron Judkins joining us. He is the Maverick archaeologist. I like to call him the Indiana Jones in a Stetson, a cowboy hat. So, I'm sorry. I don't mean to take away from your Maverick. I know you've probably been working on that for quite a while, but
I don't own a Stetson. My hats are they're not really cowboy hats like a traditional cowboy hat that you would see in Texas, such as a Stetson. They're more just outdoor hats. But every good archaeologist has to have a hat, and I a lot of people have told me I have a lot of hats, and that's true. I do. But I'm a man of many different hats.
I am too. I am too.
Depending on what day you meet me, I may literally have my flight helmet on because I'm also a flight medic on a 911 helicopter, and I have three passions in life. One of them is my first passion was music.
Sure.
And I was going to grow up and be a rock and roll. I grew up in the 80s, and I was going to be a rock and roll 80s guy. Man, my hair was long back when I had hair.
Yeah.
And my world revolved around rock and roll. That's what I was going to do. I'm glad that didn't pan out because I probably wouldn't have been around very long in the circles I was with. Man, that can be a rough road. I'm glad I got out of that road, but I still have a passion for music. Play the guitar and play a little piano, was natural on the drums. I sing. I really loved it. And then my second passion is the medical field. Matter of fact, when I got out of high school, instead of going into archaeology, I went into the medical field because I knew I needed, a way to, pay the bills and eventually have a family. And so this was the road, the road that I initially went down, and I still am in the medical field, and I love it because I get to, save people, or at least try. And in their moments that, they're going to work and, all of a sudden they need you. And when they call out that helicopter, man, it's, you got to be on your game. And so, that was another dream of mine to do that. And, man, it's so competitive. I've really been blessed. So, and then my other passion has been in archaeology. And so, I have, really have several distinct chapters in my life.
Yeah.
So it really depends on really what day you meet me, because I may be on the helicopter. Another day I may be across the world digging, on a sign and, have my archaeology hat on. So
I'm convinced you are a modern day Indiana Jones and everything. Now I got to ask this because when I was going to college, I worked at a hospital. I was a phlebotomist, and then I became an ER tech. Were you ever in Franklin, Tennessee?
No.
Okay. Because there was a gentleman who was there that I remember who worked in the emergency room. Really didn't. This time I was a phlebotomist. I didn't move into the ER tech until about a few months later, and he was already gone. But he was a gentleman. He was searching for the for Noah, and he was actually accredited. And I don't know if you know him. I remember one day someone bringing in pictures and said, "Hey, this is the guy that found the ark." And
you're talking about Ron Wyatt.
Yeah.
Ron. Yeah. Wow. You did. Oh.
I worked with him.
I don't know if you know the history of Ron Wyatt.
I do not. I worked with him at the hospital. I had no idea who he was until someone said, and they said, this is the guy that found he was working at the same hospital as I was, and he was an employee. And they said, "This is the guy that found the Ark," and that was at Franklin in Franklin, Tennessee.
Ron Wyatt he's passed away now several years. I never got to meet him.
Yeah.
But Ron was a registered nurse anesthetist, what they call a CRNA, a certified registered nurse anesthetist. A very respectable career,
Yes.
highly just a highly skilled profession.
Yep.
You have to go through anesthesiology school. It's very difficult. It's the schooling's very difficult for that. Very respectable. Ron was also into archaeology. This was brought up a lot when I, went over to Eastern Turkey to search for Noah's Ark in 2013. A lot of people asked us this question. I don't know if you ever got to see the film. It was called Finding Noah. It came out in theaters. It was in theaters all over the country in October, a year ago, almost a year ago. And it went out to Walmart and DVD, and so it's out on the cable distribution channels now, on demand, I think through Amazon and Netflix.
Yep, that's where I saw it. Actually, that's where I saw it. Yep.
A lot of people ask me the question about Ron Wyatt because the question is why are you going to look for the Ark when Ron Wyatt already found it? I went to the Darupanor site where Ron said he found the Ark. That's some 20 miles away across the valley near the Iranian border. Matter of fact, I could see the Iranian border and the trucks backed up getting to go in and out of the country. Kind of unnerving a little bit being that close. We went there to study that site before I ever made a climb to Mount Ararat. And what independent geologists and archaeologists have verified since the 1980s is that it's a natural geological formation. It's a mud uppush. And it's in a shape of a boat, but it's not a boat. And we have to realize that when you look at the scholarship a little bit closer, that Noah's Ark was not even a boat. Noah's Ark was an ark. And an ark is, in Hebrew, the Hebrews used a very specific word in the Hebrew language, and it's called tebah. And tebah did not mean a boat. They had a word for boat, but they didn't use that word. They used the word tebah. Tebah means a rectangular chest or a box. And that's what an ark is. It's a rectangular chest or a box. It's not a boat that has a rudder that you would sail, per se. This ark was a life support vessel, and it was built very specifically in a 6-to-1 ratio. What the U.S. Navy on non-motorized ships have said a 6-to-1 ratio is the ratio to build a barge that you would need to withstand the waves, because it rights itself in the waves. There was an independent study done in Japan on this that they confirmed a 6-to-1 ratio. They built models and took on a miniature scale with these rectangular box chest like boats, and they put them in waves that would just sink any normal ship, and they could never get it to capsize. So this has been verified by the U.S. Navy and scientists in Japan. But you have to remember the Darupanor site is in what Ron thought was in the shape of a boat. Now I've been there to that site. I've seen it. I've studied it. It's fascinating, but it's not it. Now that site, you have to understand, Ron did GPR studies on the site back in the 70s and 80s. GPR technology was not as good as it is now, but they never have excavated that site. There's no excavations done to say, yeah, this is wooden planks under here. They never said they found wooden planks, although they say they have found metal rivets and they say, well, that's indicative of of the ship. Noah's Ark wasn't a ship. It was a rectangular box. So, but the point is, it's just a natural geological formation. This has been independently verified by others way before me.
Okay.
In the 80s, archaeologists, geologists alike. Ron did convince a few of his buddies that it was what they were looking for, Noah's Ark. He convinced the government of Turkey it was such that they built a building, which is called a museum. It's really just kind of an empty building with some things hanging on the wall and a few fossils in there. It's really not much. They charge you, some Turkish liras to get down in there. They have a guy kind of manning that thing, but this wasn't the Ark. Had it been the Ark, I would have not made a climb to 17,000 feet, risking my life and limb to go search for it on top of the mountain. So this is something that's come up over time, and just in my professional opinion, since I've been there and studied that site, I can say with surety it's not. Now you do have Ron Wyatt supporters that still stand by that that's true, that's where the Ark is. Yeah. But probably 99% of them has never been over there to study it for themselves. There is the Ron Wyatt Museum somewhere dedicated to him. Now, Ron did some good work in some other areas. I don't think all of his claims were true. He was pretty flashy with his claims. Great claims require great evidence. Mm-hmm. He never really could produce the evidence on a lot of these claims, but some of them was pretty good. I like the Red Sea evidence that he supposedly made some dives in the Red Sea and photographically documented chariot wheels that were consistent with Egyptian style wheels. So it's circumstantial, but Ron Wyatt's not here anymore. He can't defend his position anymore. I would have loved to talk with him. He got arrested in Saudi Arabia. He said he found the crossing of the Red Sea, mm-hmm. and he was trying to get into Saudi Arabia for years, was denied, and snuck in with his son. I don't know if you know this or not, but no. Ron snuck over to the Saudi Arabian side to document where he thought the Israelites came out on the other side. He said he found 2 pillars on the Israeli side of the Red Sea, and then he found 2 pillars erected as a memorial on the other side where they crossed in Saudi Arabia. Oh, wow. And he got caught. And look, if you get inside, you just don't mess around over there with that kind of stuff. He ended up getting caught. Yeah. Him and his son, they got thrown into, a Saudi jail. They had no permission to be in there. And basically, they confiscated his camera and his film. And they said, "What are you doing here?" And he had to tell them. They said, "You're going to take us back to this site." They flew him. Now, this is Ron's story. They flew him by helicopter. He showed him the pillars. They helicoptered those pillars out of there. They're no longer there. Those pillars are gone on their Saudi Arabia side. Ron was, I think, 30 days away from execution, him and his son. The State Department stepped in, and basically there was an agreement made. Somehow, some way, they released Ron and his son, and they came back home. There's news footage of that when he came back because it made the national news. Yeah. So it was a big deal, but I disagree with the Ron Wyatt sighting called the Drupanor sign. It's just not Noah's Ark.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the only thing I knew about Ron is that he did an awesome arterial stick. for those that don't know, in the emergency room when they need to get your blood gas levels, they actually have to stick the vein in your wrist, which is very painful and very excruciating. And he was the guy that they always called because he could do it. He was the guy that could do it and was highly respected in the emergency room. That's all I knew about it. But like I said, one day someone said, "Did you know this is the guy that found Noah's Ark?" was like, really? I didn't know that. So, but let's talk about your research, your discovery, and everything. I mean, you actually physically tracked up Mount Ararat. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, Mount Ararat.
Ararat.
It's in eastern Turkey. It's the highest mountain in the east, in that region. Almost 17,000 feet, not quite. People ask us why we went to Mount Ararat. The scientific data was pointing us to the mountain, to a particular place on the mountain. It's not just we blindly think and we're just going to go up there and poke around.
Yeah.
This expedition, look, it's way too expensive. It takes up a lot of time. You're risking your life just to go up there and on a whim, thinking you're going to find something. No, that's not how this works. Number one, you have to get permission from the government of Turkey. We had to have permits to not just to climb. We had to have archaeological permits, which is we were granted exclusively for many years. The only entity to search for Noah's Ark on the mountain. Not even the universities in Istanbul could go do what we did. Not even the Turkish military went where we went.
So I'm going to ask if you can tell me why you? Why was your organization given these permits and no one else was?
Well, it goes back to the leadership, which was led by Richard Bright. Richard Bright was an airline captain, and in his young early days, he really got the bug to search for the Ark. He had heard about Colonel James Irwin, our Apollo 15 astronaut, searching for Noah's Ark. It intrigued him immensely. And there was an elderly couple in the 70s, and they were really the the grandfather, the grandmother of Ark research. I'm trying to remember their name right now. I'll remember it here in a second. But they were frankly getting too old to search anymore, and they handed all their research over to Colonel James Irwin. Colonel Irwin got interested because he said when he was in the military, he flew over that mountain, and he was convinced he saw a superstructure on Mount Ararat, on Greater Ararat. When he got retired out of NASA in the military, he made it his life's mission to the remaining part of his life to go find what he saw. He made, I think, seven climbs up Mount Ararat, nearly losing his life on one of those occasions. This is the man who was, he walked on the moon. I mean, for crying out loud, you can't get any more credible than this. And he said he's an eyewitness to flying over something. So going back to Richard Bright, he made a sudden appearance at Colonel Irwin's office unannounced, and Colonel Irwin accepted him in, and he said, "Sir, I'm Dick Bright, and I understand you're looking for the Ark." And he said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I'm interested, and I want to go on your next expedition." Just invited himself to Colonel Irwin, and Colonel Irwin says, "You're really interested, huh?" And he said, "I really am." He said, "Okay, you can go." Just like that, just okay. So he had to wait about a year. A year later, Colonel Irwin called him and said, "I'm going. You can go on this one." And so Dick Bright made many climbs with Colonel Irwin. And when Colonel Irwin died, all that research and everything got handed off to Dick Bright. And over many years, see, the Turkish people and the Kurds, the local Kurds in eastern Turkey, everyone knew who Colonel Jim Irwin was. When he showed up, cameras were there. He was on national television over there. Everybody knew this was the man who walked on the moon. Mm-hmm. And they loved him. They loved him. So because of relationships that were established before my time with people that that grew to trust and respect the leadership of these expeditions, that has carried over. And so because of that, they have allowed the continuing process through Richard Bright. And because of that, a lot of it is not what you know, it's who you know. And so that goes a long way sometimes, especially when you're working in foreign places.
Absolutely.
Where the red tape is pretty thick sometimes.
Absolutely.
So this is the reason why we were allowed exclusivity on the mountain, and we had special permissions when no one else did. But it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come cheap. It doesn't come as a free gift. Everything about this was the logistics was just incredible. To get to mount an expedition like this, it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get this to happen. To get the scientific equipment up to the top, we carried GPR, ground penetrating radar equipment that has to be taken all the way to the summit. We climbed. There's no dropping it off with a helicopter. This has to be hauled up. We had probably over 40 cases of luggage and scientific equipment that made it on the summit. Then you had all the scientific team, the geologist, the archaeologist. I was one of them, consulting archaeologist on the mountain, as well as the associate producer of the film Finding Noah. And because of my medical experience, I tripled up as team medic. So you have to double and triple your duties up there because, it really, you go into life survival mode as soon as you get up on top there. You're on you're on a glacier, and man, it is harsh. It is harsh. If you see the film, you'll see how harsh those conditions are. It really wasn't all that fun at first.
You're sitting there in your tent going, what did I sign up for here? Right.
Earl and Violet Cummings was the original researchers I was trying to think of. Earl and Violet Cummings.
Okay, Earl. Okay. So when you're on the mountain, and obviously, I've talked to Treasure, and you're absolutely right. You don't invest. This is a huge investment, huge capital investment. And, typically it's done through a grant process or through you get a private donor. And you have to show the donor there's something there. They're just not going to give you the money that you need to do this type of research. That's one thing about archaeology that's outside of the other science. It's all grant money, one way or the other. But you guys, archaeologists do a lot of hat in hand.
This wasn't any grant money that we got. My expeditions have been, with the exception of Finding Noah, have been funded out of pocket. Now, when I went to Peru and Bolivia with L.A. Marzulli to film Watchers 8, he paid for my plane trip, but nothing, my everything else I had to essentially pay for. My time, I didn't even get paid for my time. I was there a month. That killed me financially. But so traditionally I've gone out of pocket, but the Finding Noah was it was funded by private investors, anonymous investors. I never even got to know their names, but they funded that. So I, got to my travel expenses and my equipment. You need Arctic equipment. You can't just take a tent from Walmart up there. You're going to die.
You're buying North
Face. You have
Face.
to have a 4-season tent. My tent costs $1,500.
Yeah.
But you have to. It's a 4-season tent. My sleeping bag cost about $1,500.
Yeah.
Because that's what you need to survive. And when I went to get that stuff, it was in the summer. It was like July.
Yeah.
And they said, "Why do you need all this stuff?" I said, "Well, I'm
going to Ararat." And we can talk about that when we, Doctor, when we get back from the break here. We got a short 4-minute break, and then we'll be back. We got to pay our bills. We don't have a grant money either here at the Midnight Ocean. So you're listening to the Midnight Ocean radio show and podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me here live every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we're talking with Dr. Aaron Judkins, and we're going to talk a little bit more about his discovery on Noah and some other great discoveries he's made.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That's right. You are listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and a podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. Join us on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. Now, we'll tell you, for all those Google Plus people, we actually added Google Plus to our website. So if you go to the website, you'll see the G Plus. Click on that, and you can follow us there, and we'll follow you as well. We are going to implement a program probably next week. I got to get my hands wrapped around the technology, but we will probably implement a hangout session with all of our listeners so you guys can join in. We'll give you a date when we can do that as well, and it'll be open topic night for that night. But tonight we are talking about ancient biblical archaeology with our guest, Dr. Aaron Judkins. So, Doctor, right before we went on the break, you're talking about the equipment and buying all of that. I'm very familiar. You would never know it from my physique now, but I had a real good friend. Our goal was to climb all of the North American mountains that were in North America, and we set out 2 summers to do that. It never reached our goal, but it was fun. We had our share of North Face. But you tried,
right?
We did. We trained. One time we got in serious trouble. We're in the North Face catalog. If you go to 1997 North Face catalog, there's pictures of Sean and I there, where we heard there's a great storm that was coming through Tennessee, one of the biggest winter storms ever. So we immediately blew off work, threw our gear in the back of the truck, and proceeded up to the Great Smoky Mountains. And we were stranded there for 7 days, couldn't get out. And we actually, because we had the gear to do this, because we were training for climbing Rainier, we had the gear to do it. So we went in and carried food to people that were trapped on the Appalachian Trail, and then also food for the gray wolves. And we built an excavation or a evac site for a Black Hawk to come in and carry people out that were also stranded and stuff. Yeah. So So North Face was graciously, we wrote an article about our endeavors, and everything. And North Face actually published it in their 1997 North Face catalog. It was good times. I got a ticket out of that, by the way. I almost became a felon because we weren't supposed to be up there to begin with. I didn't know that a park ranger at the Smoky Mountains was a federal officer, but they told us that I had a 4-wheel drive, and they're like, "Don't go up the mountain. You can't go." Well, I went, and needless to say, the ranger, when she saw us coming off the mountain as we were, 7 days later, she was like, "We told you not to go up." And of course I got a ticket.
Right.
Had to go to court. It was disobeying a federal law enforcement officer, I guess, was the actual charge or something. But because of our good deeds, we were given a slap on the wrist and told never to do it again. But and then Sean, I took a nasty fall, and then Sean went and tried to become a pro mogul skier. But so that was the end of our mountaineering days. But yeah, I mean, that equipment is not cheap. For those that don't know, I mean, back when you went, when was it? What time frame?
2013.
2013. So it was recent. Okay, yeah, it was fairly recent. But I'm sure the price was. I mean, for us, like I had a Denali jacket, which that thing was $900. A North Face, just the jacket alone was $900.
Yeah.
The bibs were $400.
Let me tell you a story about my jacket. I had to order one from the UK, and it didn't arrive in time. There was no Arctic gear out in July. I had to order, a lot of things online that wasn't immediately available. My jacket didn't come in time. It was my Arctic jacket, the one I needed for the summit. I left for Istanbul with that thing still, in transit somewhere in the UK. I left instructions to have that coat shipped to one of the guys here stateside, ship it to his address in another state. And as soon as he got it, I had him ship it to Istanbul, and went from Istanbul to Ankara, which is the capital of Ankara. It got in another plane, went to eastern Turkey. From there, it went on a bus into Dagobazit. From there, it went up to the camp. From the camp, it went to a jeep. From a jeep, it went to a horse, and a horse up to 14,000 feet. Where the day before I summited, the day before I climbed for the summit, that coat came in on a horse. And man, I was so glad to see that horse it was like Christmas, man. I pulled out that jacket. I didn't know how I was going to make it without that coat, but I had another coat. But you need the coat, the right equipment for the top.
Yes.
And so I had a jacket. I just layered up a bunch, but that jacket came in the night before I summited. Man, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't realize when you're on the side of a cliff, like it is brutally cold, and it's not something that you can take a normal parka or a normal winter coat. These are high tech pieces of equipment. I call them equipment and treat them as such. But amazing. So when you're on the side of the mountain, that is so cool. And I've seen the pictures, and they're incredible. Once in a lifetime event. Did you guys ever come across, like, did you find physical evidence?
Well, here's what we found. We came back with samples, and the samples were basically we didn't know what they were. They were black. We thought maybe they were organic. We just didn't know for sure. These samples, they came back in a chain of custody, but they were very small. They came out of one of the I-square drills that we were drilling through our drilling operation, and these samples were eventually tested, and the samples came back very surprising. It didn't come back what we thought it was, but it came back as smooth muscle animal protein, and with I think with some like cellulose material, which could be straw.
Yeah.
So that's what the report came back as.
Wow.
Well, it surprised us because this came out of a hole 60 feet down in the ice, and we're hitting smooth muscle animal protein.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the wood that we had hoped for, but it was animal remains. Now, anyone familiar with that area knows there's nothing on the summit of that mountain.
Yeah.
Now, around the base of the mountain, there are animals. You got the regular, you got the wild dogs. There's these wild sheep dogs. We ran into a few of those guys. Those dogs are just, they are huge, and they have one job, and that is usually they're protecting sheep. Man, I was amazed at how well they were on guard, and they are a formidable creature. Yeah. I had to skirt around several of them because, man, you don't want to get tangled up with those guys. They'd probably just kill you.
Yeah, yeah.
Years ago, there used to be reports of bears on the mountain. I don't know that I don't know that they've had any recent sightings of bears. But whatever this animal protein was, it was old. I mean, old. Nothing recent. So we were quite amazed about that. The area that we had hoped to pull up wood, we got one of the drill bit augers stuck down the ice, and we couldn't get it out. We lost an auger down one of the hole. We couldn't retrieve that. We actually had to order some diamond tip auger bits from China so we can cut through whatever we were hitting, and we ended up coring 2 samples out of there. So it's quite a laborious task at 17,000 feet. to perform these operations of ground penetrating radar and ice core drilling. It was a very hard experience. I did all of that. I took my turns on pull. You got to pull that GPR sled with a harness, and I got on there and pulled that harness, and I did the drilling, and I did everything that that I could to help fill in. So it was quite a laborious task for sure.
So from start to finish, how long were you on the mountain?
We were in eastern Turkey almost 2 months.
But actually on site, how long were you on site?
Yeah. Well, we were on site. Let's see, we had guys up on the summit for 3 weeks.
Wow.
I wasn't on the summit for 3 weeks, but we continued the ice core drilling in other pockets of the Eastern Plateau. That takes a minimum of a 3-man crew. So we left a 3-man crew up there, Bill and Will Hughes, who were a father-son team, and Bruce Hall, who was the other archaeologist. And they stayed up there probably another 6 or 7 days. So we had people on the summit for 3 weeks. We were on the mountain. It took us a week to climb the mountain. We were up on the summit some 3 weeks. But when I descended, it took me 10 to 12 hours to descend from the Eastern Plateau side. You have to come around, you have to ascend again, and then go down. Then I had to walk 5 miles after I got off the mountain, 5 miles across the valley to the pickup vehicle because the PKK wouldn't allow vehicles in there. So I had to walk to my pickup vehicle 5 miles. Man, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But coming off the mountain in 10 or 12 hours, man, that was brutal. I thought going up was hard, and it was. But coming down was absolutely brutal.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, so you guys, where was your base camp, or did you have a base camp? It doesn't sound like you even had a camp. You ascended,
we did.
And then
we had several camps there. We had Camp 1, which is at about 10,000 feet. We stayed the night there and acclimated. Just like you do at Everest or whatever. Then you go up to Camp 2, which is about 12,000 feet, and overnight there, and you climb from Camp 1 to 2, and then you come back down to Camp 1. Then you go from Camp 2 to 3, and then you come back down to Camp 2. So you climb it in stages. You go from Camp 3 up to Camp 4, and you stay up there a few hours and acclimate. Then you go back down to Camp 3. So we climbed it just like you would Everest. You climbed it in stages so you can acclimate to the altitude.
Yeah.
So I didn't overnight at 14,000 feet. I should have. I went up with Bill and Will Hughes as a 3-man team, an advanced team, before even any of the dig crew or the film crew went. And it's I should have stayed a night and rested up, but I didn't do that. In hindsight, that was probably a mistake. I should have rested. That altitude just hits you hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But there are camps along the way, but the high camp is at about 14,000. After that, you're committed to go to the summit. Once you start, you get to a point where there's a point that you can turn around, but once you hit a certain point on that trail, you're committed to the top. At that point, there's no turning around. So, yeah, it's definitely it was a new thing from this archaeologist from Texas. I can tell you that.
Now I got to ask this. Be honest with yourself. Were you sitting there? How many times were you sitting there and you just said, "What the heck am I doing?"
Oh yeah. There's many times you'll see in the film where I stop, man. I'm about to throw up.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know if I can make it. I turned around and Bill and Will Hughes said, "Man, look at that." It was about 6 a.m. We started climbing at 2 or 3 a.m. It was about 6 a.m, maybe 6:30. The sun's coming up. It casted a huge shadow of the mountain on the valley floor beneath me. And I looked at the shadow of Mount Ararat on the floor there, of the valley floor, and I just thought, man, look at this. Look at where I'm at. Look at what I'm doing, And so I just gave me some inspiration to keep going. Once I got on the top, I was miserable again. And, as a matter of fact, when some of the other crew came up there, I said, man, I don't think I can do that. I told Kevin DeVries, I said, I don't think I can do this. And he goes, it's, give it a day. The weather's bad right now. He said, give it a day. The weather will clear, sun will come out, and you'll just give it a day. Don't, hang in there. So I did. And he was right. The weather broke and the sun came out and it was tolerable, that. So I was like, well, okay, I can do this now. This is, I'm going to make it. So you have to just kind of push through those moments of doubt.
Yep.
And just, plunge, just keep going forward. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, has anybody been back and to do any research since you guys were there last, or no?
There's been others who not in a major expedition like we did. Ours was the last major expedition. It may be the last expedition ever like that again. I mean, it was probably the single greatest scientific push for the Ark ever. So I don't know that an expedition will ever happen like that again, to be honest with you. Yeah. But there has been some people go back. But when the military coup happened over in Turkey, and the political instability in the region, and of course ISIS coming, up through northern Iraq and in Syria, it's made it very difficult to try to get back. So that's all closed off right now. It's unforeseen if we can ever get back there or not, to be honest with you. But the situation is not good over there now. Matter of fact, it's worse than when we were there.
Yeah, and that's what's so sad now with ISIS. I mean, we are losing so much cultural history. I mean, they're blowing things up, and as you know, they're destroying so much, and it's just it's so sad. It really is. But I'm glad you guys were able to get there and do the work that you needed to do, and get out of there safely. Because even when you were there in 2013, it was pretty, like you said, the PKK was pretty. It was still a little hairy.
Oh yeah, they intercepted part of our team as they descended the mountain, which including the director of the film. Those guys went down first before all of us. We didn't even know it until we got down the mountain days later, and we realized that those guys had been intercepted, taken around the mountain, several hours off the trail. They had their cell phones and passports confiscated, and they met up with one of the generals, and it was there's 40 guys with machine guns around them. This is a very tense situation. So, and of course, they want what, most everybody wants, and that's money. They wanted $600,000 in tax. So you're not going to see any of that in the film, but this is the reality of it over there. They eventually were released after a few hours and let go. But man, matter of fact, the director of the film, Brent Bombs, basically told the film crew, I'm releasing you from your contracts. You're free to go to Istanbul, get on a plane, and go home. Don't feel committed to stay here any longer. I can't guarantee your safety. And not one of those guys left. They all stayed, which is a testament to the crew. It was amazing. But the truce actually broke. There was a truce between the PKK and the Turkish military. That truce that had held actually broke while we were on the mountain. And there's a part in the film, when you're watching the film, there's a gunshot goes off behind me somewhere up in the mountains. And so you just never know. There's, back in the 80s, one of the climbers that I talked with, he's interviewed in the film. These guys were rousted out of their tents at 6 o'clock in the morning with machine guns. They had all their equipment, their cameras and their film all put in a pile, their tents, and burned. And I think they forced their boots off. They lined them up to execute them. Man, it's pretty frightening when you think of it. There's no law there. It's just whatever law they want, and if, like I said earlier, the Turkish military don't even go where we go. This is a PKK controlled area, the Kurdish freedom fighters. So it's very tense when you're on the mountain. You're literally putting your life at risk, not just because of the mountain itself, the atmosphere, the rocks and the crevasses. We nearly lost one of our alpinists down a crevasse. Had he not been roped with the other guy, we would have lost him. That was a couple of seasons before us, Kevin DeVries. But they're blanketed by snow. You just think it's solid, and it's not. And
Yep.
So there's a lot of risk for sure that you undertake sometimes when you do these things.
See, none of that was in the film.
No, because they confiscated the cameras and stuff, and there was they couldn't film that even if they wanted to. I mean, this was a life and death situation.
Yeah. It's not like someone's pointing a gun at. It's like, hold on, let me get my camera. You're
these
fighting
guys,
for your life.
They had everything confiscated, their passports, everything, their cell phones, everything was taken from them.
Wow.
So there was no way to film it. I mean, and why would you if you have guns pointed at you and they're telling you, give us everything, right? I mean, it's just like I said, this was part of the team that initially went down. We were still up on the summit when this happened. When Kevin DeVries fell through that crevasse, that was a few seasons prior, so that was way before the 2013 season. So there was no film crews around to even film that. But this is just some of the reality that I realized when I went there. I thought, wow. Bruce Hall will tell you there's a plaque up at 14,000 feet. There's a plaque up there on a rock, and there's got about 50 names on that plaque. And it's 50 people that died at that point trying to climb that mountain, and they never made it. Wherever they lived, they never made it home. So that's a plaque you don't want to have your name on.
Yeah. Now, like in Everest or whatever, did you? And this is gory, but it's just amazing because this is more. Not only are you doing an expedition to find the Ark as an archaeologist, but you are a mountaineer. I mean, you're in it. So there's two storylines going on here. I mean, is it like Everest where they leave the bodies there, or do they bring them home?
No, because they're now unless you fall down a crevasse and you're just gone.
Yeah.
Some of the local Kurds told me they've seen bodies sticking out of crevasses deep down in the ice. They've seen feet sticking out. One of them told me that he saw a person. They didn't have modern clothes on. They had like some kind of a, it's like they were 1,000 years old. I mean, they had goat skins or whatever, and these leather sandals or shoes, or, he said they were ancient. They were old. And they couldn't get down to them, but he saw them, and they were down in an ice crevasse below them. The ice changes and fluctuates, and
cracks
sometimes
and
it exposes, and sometimes it covers things up. So, but the most part, it's accessible that you can get people off of there. There was a guy that you'll see on the film that got hurt. He was from the Czech Republic, and he broke his leg. He had a shoulder injury and a head injury, and I got up to him, and man, he was in pretty bad shape. So they got him off. That just happened to be a climbing team from Istanbul climbing that day, and they took the shovel handles, and they sacrificed the Kurds sacrificed one of their tents and their poles. I had some duct tape, and they made a makeshift stretcher out of tent poles and shovel handles and duct tape, and carried that man down several thousand feet down a steep grade. I don't know how they did it, but they carried him down this makeshift stretcher to where they got him down where they could land one of the helicopters, which was another mystery. You just don't land helicopters and fly helicopters around there.
Yeah.
Historically, you just been shot out of the sky.
They get shot down, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
really, really amazing stuff. Finding Noah.
Cool stuff. Cool stuff. When we get back, let's change it up. Let's go to a little bit warmer climate. Let's go to Peru when we get back from the break. And we'll talk to our guest, our very special guest, Dr. Aaron Judkins. We do have some questions from the chat room. I'll make sure that I get those asked for you guys. But we are talking with Dr. Aaron Judkins as he is telling us what actually happened on the Finding Noah expedition. But this is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is right. It is the top of the hour here in Eastern Eastern time zone. Thank you for joining us tonight as we talk with our very special guest, Dr. Aaron Judkins, and we were just talking about the expedition to Finding Noah. If you guys have not seen that out there, I know it's out on Netflix and various subscriptions. I believe it's actually Amazon Prime as well. And I'll get a link out there on our website, Dr. Judkins, so that people can watch it. I'm going to go back and watch it now. Now that I have the inside scoop, I'm going to kind of watch the filming and see and say, oh, and I didn't hear the gunshot. I don't remember seeing that in the original when I was doing it. I might have just missed it, not paying attention and everything. So I will definitely get back to that. And then, of course, now, it's interesting. You said that you found matter, you found flesh matter, and you found cellulose matter, which of course would lead you to believe that, obviously animal laying on top of something, straw, and this is an arid region. I mean, there's no vegetation up there whatsoever. So
no, there's not.
Yeah.
There's not any vegetation up there.
So that's amazing. You said you guys drilled down about 60 feet for these core samples.
Yeah, they varied in depth, but there should be no organic matter there at all.
Yeah.
So the fact that we got organic matter was pretty astonishing.
Sure.
So yeah, there's the website findingnoah.com is still up. I think you can see the movie trailers. There's videos that you can click on, and it'll introduce each explorer to findingnoah.com. And then if you go to my website, aaronjudkins.com, you can check out some of the interviews I've done about the film. Sure. I've got a journal called the Quest for Noah's Ark Expedition Journal. And then I got one on Peru as well. So when I did my work with L.A. Marzulli and Watchers 8. So go check all that out at aaronjudkins.com.
Well, and that's exactly, do you have time? I want to make sure, because I know you're a busy man.
Yes.
And everything. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. And at any time, please, I tell people this is like a dinner date, but unfortunately I don't provide dinner and stuff. So if you want to get up and leave, feel free to at any time.
I'm ready to get to the questions too.
Yeah. Well, we have one. Okay, so let me ask. So one of our in the chat room says Ark of Gabriel reported discovered in Mecca, taken to Antarctica. The Antarctica. His opinion about what it is, and the reason for it being taken there.
Okay, what was that again? What was
All right, let me reread this. The Ark of Gabriel reported discovered in Mecca, taken to Antarctica. His opinion about what it is and the reason for it taken where it was. So the Ark of Gabriel. So first, the Ark of Gabriel. What is the Ark of Gabriel? Do you know?
This is all new to me. Okay. I don't know anything about that, unfortunately. Okay. You want to send something over to me, you can email it to me at aaronjudkins.com. Okay. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, just send it to aaronjudkins.com. There's a contact form there. Sure. Just send it to me there.
Sure.
I really don't know anything about that, so I can't comment on it.
That was the main one in the question. Most of the people are just saying wow, in the chat room. Going back to Al Marzulli, I can never pronounce his name correctly.
L.A. Marzulli.
L.A. Marzulli. So tell us about him a little bit and his background for those that don't know.
L.A. Marzulli. He's, my first introduction to L.A. Marzulli was through Zondervan. I'm an avid reader. I don't get to read for pleasure very much anymore.
Sure.
But, man, I've probably read 1,000 books in my life. One of the books that I got, I had an avid, keen interest in giants and the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
L.A. Marzulli wrote a book. It was originally published through Zondervan, called, I think it's just called The Nephilim. And so I read that book, and he ended up writing 2 more books and, a trilogy on it. I met L.A. incidentally at a conference we were both speaking at, and there's L.A. Marzulli, and he asked me. Matter of fact, I gave him a copy of my book that had debuted just not long before, called Alien Agenda: The Return of the Nephilim. Mm-hmm. And so I gave him a copy of my book, and he goes, "Man, I need you in Peru. I'm going to Peru to study the Paracas elongated skulls. Would you be interested in going?" So L.A. Marzulli is a Nephilim researcher. Uh-huh. He's the host of the Watcher series.
Yep.
Also produced and directed and produced by Richard Shaw. Mm-hmm. And so I again bumped into L.A. and Richard Shaw at they were filming Watchers 4 in West Texas at Joe Taylor's Mount Blanco Museum in Crosbyton, Texas. And it's a pretty famous picture, but you see a guy kind of in an old cowboy hat. It's kind of beat up. It kind of looks like a miner's hat a little bit, but he's standing next to a huge 47-inch human femur that's went viral on the internet. And so they were there filming Watchers 4, and that's where I ran into him again. And then before I knew it, was in Peru filming Watchers 8.
So, okay, so I want to back up. So that picture is actually real?
Well, the picture's real. The femur, Joe will tell you, I have a cast of that femur in my office right now. It's 47 inches. Uh-huh. That is a sculpted femur. And then the femur is sculpted off of a eyewitness report out of Egypt. Joe Taylor has the original letter. And if you haven't had Joe Taylor on the show, you might ought to get Joe Taylor on to talk about giants.
I normally don't do this, but I have been trying to get to L.A., Missouri. I've been trying to reach out to him. No return. Joe Taylor was one that was on my list. I just haven't shot out an email yet.
It's hard to get it's hard even for me, and I got L.A.'s number. It's hard to get a hold of him. It's hard to get a hold of me sometimes. Yeah. Just when you're going in all these different directions, you have to prioritize. And man, I tell you what, who was it? Gosh, I mean, you're just so busy sometimes that you can't stop and breathe. And I think a lot of people would understand that. You just sometimes there was a good example of that, Jeff, is when you emailed me months ago about coming on the show, but correct. I couldn't get there. Yeah. I just had so much on my plate. I was just overflowing that I couldn't keep up, and I was there's a point back in April I just stopped doing radio shows. As a matter of fact, I hosted my own show on Inception Radio Network called Epic Voyages Radio. And I did that for 3 years, and I just had to let something go. I just couldn't do it anymore. I love doing that show. Yeah. And I don't know if any of your listeners had heard me on Epic Voyages, but man, I interviewed Klaus Donna live out of Austria. I interviewed, people all over. Man, that was such a fun show to do. But I had to let something go. So it was several months for me to get caught up. And then, I had to go back and look through those emails and, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, ours.
And so sometimes it takes several months, but Joe Taylor would be also a good one to have on the show. But sure. Joe Taylor would tell you the story about that 47, inch human femur. Sure. It's based off of an eyewitness account, but it is a sculptured piece, and he will tell you that. It's very clear about that and open and up front. There's no saying this is the real femur, but he did it to scale to show you what it would look like. And then, of course, if you go and see that picture, Joe's got that picture on the cover of his book now. He wrote a book called Giants Against Evolution, and that's on the front cover of his book. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am always fascinated with the Nephilim. I've been fascinated since the day I first heard them on Coast to Coast, and giants, and it's just amazing. And
well, people are interested. George Norrie had me on Coast to Coast AM about that by my book, Alien Agenda: The Return of the Nephilim.
Yep.
Jimmy Church had me on Fade to Black. He waited months for me to come on the program before I could get on. But there's something to the Nephilim. They're vetted in archaeology.
Sure.
We have a lot of good evidence. In my office now, I have a piece of pottery. It's a cast. It's not the real one, but the on the pottery there's an inscription in Paleo Hebrew, and on the name. On the inscription of the pottery is a name, and that name reads Goliath. So, and this is found in Gath, in Israel, where Goliath was from. Goliath from Gath. So we do know that there were tribes of giants after the flood. We do know there was a race of giants before the flood. If you want to read about that, and if you like to read, and you probably get it on audio too, I would highly encourage you to read the book of Genesis, especially Genesis 6, and then read in Job, because Job is probably the oldest book in the Bible. And then I would read, although it doesn't really talk about giants, but it takes you back into antiquity. And then I would read Numbers. Because these talk about giants. Goliath had 4 brothers. So when you read the story about David and Goliath, and he picked up 5 rocks with that sling, he picked up 5 rocks for a reason. He picked up 1 for Goliath and 4 for his brothers. Yeah. Because after all, right? After all, you may have your brothers involved. Hey, and suddenly your fight becomes an unfair fight.
Yeah.
So David picked up 5 rocks just in case. And then it tells throughout the scripture that eventually it names 3 of his brothers. The 4th one's not named, but it names Goliath's 3 brothers. They had 6 fingers and 6 toes and on each hand and foot. They had 24 digits. These weren't just giant guys. They were giant, but they were evil. There was, you don't understand. There was these races of giants, the Rephaims and the Zazumans and the Anakims.
The Amorites. The Amorites were
the Amorites.
The Amorites, yeah.
So, you look there. It's just it's like Lord of the Rings. It reads like Lord of the Rings.
Well, you're right. Which I
here's
find
another thing I would recommend to read. Before I forget, read the book of Enoch. Read the book of Jasher. Now, some people say Yasher because J in Hebrew is not pronounced with the J, it's pronounced with the Yah. But I'm from Texas, I pronounce it Jasher. So, Jasher, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, and there's another one, what's the other one? They're apocryphal books. The book of Jubilees, the book of Jasher, the book of Enoch. Read those because it's going to blow you away. But then get the researchers' books like L.A. Marzulli and like myself and Joe Taylor's and others who are researching the Nephilim, because what you're going to find and dig into is history you're not going to get from the professor in the classroom. Yeah. Judd Burton, Dr. Judd Burton is another one of my colleagues. He's written extensively on the Nephilim and giants. It's another guest I would recommend to have on your show. A very well-researched scholar on the Nephilim as well. So, just a lot of materials coming forth now, but there's plenty of resources for you to dig into.
Yeah, I mean the problem I think with mainstream with like Google. All right, let's talk about, because most people will go out to Google and they'll search, and the problem is that there's so many doctored images out there, right? Pictures. And I don't know if that is more as a disinformation, because are you finding that? There
was a lot of pictures coming out of Greece that shows these huge skulls and these people digging around these huge skulls.
Yeah,
those are all photoshopped. I've talked at length with Joe Taylor, L.A. Marzulli, and others Dr. Burton, Judd Burton. We finally tracked down the source of those photos floating around on the internet. That was done, and Joe Taylor will vet this and can tell you the name of the university, but it was done by some university students for a contest. And it's very difficult to tell, what's real, what's not real, but we did track it down. And those are photoshopped photos. So those aren't real. It wasn't done as a disinformation. It was just done as a contest. But man, those students did a really good job because it's Joe's a photographic expert. When he's looking at that, he's got an eye. He can tell you the subtle differences between what's real and what's been photoshopped, and a very good expert in that area. But we know for sure that those have been photoshopped. But there are accounts of giants that have been found and have been documented. So this is part of, the researcher, the research that like Ellie Marzulli's doing, and myself and others.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the. You were down in Peru, and the skulls. I mean, there's a race of skulls, and I've seen pictures of you holding a couple of them where the skulls are oblonged.
Yeah, they're elongated.
Elongated.
L.A. Marzulli asked me to come down and study these elongated skulls from the Paracas culture. This is a pre-Inca culture. The Incas didn't bind their heads, but we do know that head binding or cradle boarding was practiced. It's practiced by other cultures around the world. The Egyptians probably did it. There's a tribe in Africa that still today practices cradle headboarding. But we don't know why the Paracas culture did it. Was it for aesthetics, beauty? Was it for royalty, to show they were from a royal bloodline? Or was it they were emulating something that they had seen, such as the Nephilim? It's very interesting. We don't know all those answers yet, but I did write a report about 4 elongated skulls that I was asked to study in the Paracas History Museum when Senior One was still alive. So I did a lot of work on that. It's published in either my journal, The Mystery of the Elongated Skulls, which is my journal available on the website. I also published it through L.A. Marzulli's book, On the Trail of the Nephilim, Volume 2. You can find it there. I was recently asked to study the Star Child skull, if you're familiar with that. This is a skull that has been going around for years, made famous probably mostly by Lloyd Pye. Lloyd's passed away now, but claiming that was not a human skull, it was alien. There's new research being done on that skull by new investigators. Chase Kleski is one of the lead investigators now on the skull. Chase was actually with me, and Joe Taylor was with me in Peru when we were filming Watchers 8. So, matter of fact, I made a little film as well called On the Trail Across Peru and Bolivia. We went into Tiwanaku and Pumapunka, same places you see on Ancient Aliens. We went there and looked as well. So, but Chase Kleski is the lead investigator now on what is called commonly as the Star Child skull. I was asked to do an independent evaluation. I'm not really on the team, but I was asked to do an independent investigation of that skull. And I made my report available to Chase, and it's also up on my website, on my blog. It's there now, that report. So there's some forensics that I've been involved with in studying the osteology of these skulls. But the working theory for LA is that he's working on the Nephilim theory and the disbursement after Israel and the kingdom was divided, and did the giants all die out, or did some of them escape? And there's evidence that there was giants here in North America. So these are very intriguing questions. We have Lovelock Cave in Nevada. We have the Ohio mounds. We have a number of other reports around the country. Even here where I live locally, there was in a cave called Panther Cave, there was a 7-foot Native American Indian found in that cave. It was a burial, but 7 foot. Now, is that a giant? Well, for a Native American, that's pretty tall. So why did the Lovelock skulls have red hair? Why did the Paiute Indians say that they were cannibalistic and they were fearful of them, and basically drove them out of the cave to kill them because they lived in fear of these giants. What we do have at Lovelock is the skulls. Those skulls are still at the Winnemucca Museum. They're not on display. They've been taken off display, and they're down in the basement. But we've got photographs of them. And look, and there was 2 pestles found at the mouth of that cave. A pestle is a huge stone that was you grind with, for your corn, mesquite beans, or whatever. A normal pestle is when you hold in your hand and you not a matate and a mano where you grind it, but this is more where you kind of a chop with it. It's called a pestle. 2 pestles were found at the mouth of Lovelock Cave. One weighed, I think, 25 pounds, and the other weighed 40 pounds. In other words, these are giant pestles. You can't tell me a Native American woman is going to be out there, chopping some corn with a giant pestle that weighs 25 pounds even. That's just not, it's just not practical. These had to be huge people, and the giants of Lovelock proved that those skeletons, those skulls, prove that, these guys were not normal size. They were huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like I said, I mean, you can't read the Bible and be a reader of the Bible. And it's neat because I think that's where you get a lot of your inspiration, correct? I mean, you've read the Bible and, you quote it and you're like, all right, so let's go find it. And, the Bible's riddled. If you look at there are definitely giant races that are clearly spoken about in the Bible.
Well, there is. I outline a lot of those in my book, Alien Agenda, The Return of the Nephilim. It's up on my website. But look, I don't go out to prove the Bible. People ask me about that all the time. My goal is not to prove the Bible. Truth can stand on its own. It don't need me to defend it. I find information if I can. Yeah. But not just me, others in other countries outside of the land of the Bible, for crying out loud, that have confirmed the Old Testament scriptures, confirmed these passages. This ostracon and these little pottery pieces that I'm telling you about, that was found in Israel, has Goliath's name written in Paleo-Hebrew. There's only one guy in history known as Goliath, and it's the biblical Goliath. Yeah, it's not it's not the Goliath down the street. It's the Goliath. So, but we have evidence that's found outside of the land of the Bible in Egypt, in Syria, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, other countries that have confirmed the biblical accounts. The Bible doesn't need to be proven, but certainly archaeology has confirmed what's already been written, and more comes to light every day. And it confirms that if those things are true, well, maybe that book of Genesis is true. Maybe what's written at the end of that book is true, called the book of Revelation, and things are coming to pass in ancient prophecies that hasn't happened yet, but, where are we at in all that stuff? Well, there's a lot of people who say that something's coming. Art Bell used to say the quickening.
Yes.
He used to say something's coming. Everybody's telling you something's coming. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. It doesn't matter if you're whatever. You always hear something's coming down the pike. Yep. And if you look at it through a perspective of either theology or eschatology or philosophy, people are saying the same thing. It just depends on your interpretation. But through a Christian lens, this is all coming down to what is called the end times in the book of Revelation. Look, even the different faiths, the Christian faith, the Islamic faith, the Catholic faith, these are the three major religions that are coming out of Israel. Then you got the Catholic faith in Rome, right? I'm going to be in Israel in just a few months, and every one of those different religions, every one of them have their own end game. There's something that this is all coming down to, and I think this is leading up to something. So it doesn't matter, what angle you come from. It does matter, however, what you believe and why you believe it, and that's why it's important, because archaeology doesn't lie. The rocks doesn't lie.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Facts are facts, and they're stubborn.
And that's, I guess that's the thing with you. And I'm just blowing through the break that we have here because I want to continue this conversation uninterrupted. Because it's important. Like for us, for people, I see the pictures and I can't disseminate if they're real or whatever. And then you said that most of them are, Photoshop because of competition. But you've actually held these objects in your hands. There is no denying that. So you've experienced those. What was it? How do I say this? What's the feeling? What's it like to hold the Star Child skull in your hand? Did you have that opportunity? You investigated, but were you able to actually hold it?
Yeah, sure. I investigated the real skull. I had to. I had to see it and examine it and do all the things that all the studies I did on it. Some people would that knows the history of the skull, that Star Child skull, they've already, kind of got something in their mind about that skull. They would probably say, man, I had a religious moment or, I had an epiphany or something. I never had that because I look at it as an objective scientist from a forensic osteological point of view. And I don't care what it is. I'm getting the data from it. I try to remain objective, so I'm not, slanted in my conclusions. I want the data to speak for itself, and not what Aaron Judkins thinks about the skull. Doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the data is telling me. The empirical science has to speak louder than anyone's theory, and so I just never I don't allow myself to get wrapped up in that moment, because I'm there to do a job, and I want to do it as objectively and scientifically as I can. So for me, it doesn't matter. Is it cool to say I held the Star Child skull? Yes, but you have to realize that was a person at one time. I treat all those skulls, any human remains, very respectfully. It's not a game for me. So most people will be taking pictures with it. I did get some pictures of the Paracas skulls and me holding it and looking at it, but I'm not posing with the skulls. There's a difference there. It's not a vacation for me. I'm doing it because there's a reason I've been asked to study these skulls. So for me, it's different, but I do enjoy being able to do that. I don't use it though I don't use it to self-promote though. It's not Aaron Judkins holding the Star Child skull and look, how cool is this? It doesn't matter for me, because at one time this was a person. At one time this person lived and existed and breathed and had feelings and has been floating around the last 20 years or whatever, like it's on Barnum and Bailey's circus. So there's a point where it's just got to I think there's been a lack of respect in the past, and so that's why I'm pretty serious about it when it comes to it. About doing these things. For me, and you can tell, Chase Kleske, Chase and I worked on those Paracas skulls. Brian Forster wasn't even in the room. All those guys left. It was Chase Kleske and I doing all the all the DNA work on it.
Wow.
You know, Joe Taylor was in there working with us. But for, it took us hours to unwrap this baby mummy skull. Joe Taylor and I probably took 6 hours, maybe 8, to unwrap this baby mummy skull. An infant elongated skull, probably 2,000 years old. It's just we were so careful it was so delicate just to unwrap it. It was a very tedious process. But Chase Kleske and I, we did a lot of that work when no one else was in the room. I mean, you're talking Peru with no central heat and air. You're back in a back room. It's hot. It's sweaty. It's not fun sometimes. But Chase and I was there to do a job, and so you'll see that in Watchers 8. By the way, if you've seen Watchers 8, you'll see us unwrapping that infant elongated skull. Watchers 10 is now out, and both Chase and I make a cameo appearance in Watchers 10 with this skull again. So pretty interesting. Now I have to tell you, when there was a moment when I was holding that infant elongated skull, and we got the final wrap off that elongated infant skull, and you'll see this on Watchers 8. And when we put the light on it, we turn it around, and that thing's staring at us. The jaws drop. You can hear an audible gasp. You can see the red hair. It's amazing. Now, that's
wow.
probably the only moment I had like that, but it's just, this thing hasn't seen the light of day in 2,000 years. I mean, who's not going to go, wow? It's stunning. So for me, looking back and thinking back on it, that's probably one of my moments I had with one of those skulls. But and it was fascinating. We made cast. Joe Taylor made cast of those skulls. I got a cast in my office. It looks just like the real thing. Joe is so good, it's dangerous, because people say, well, you can't have that. Well, it's not real. I take it to conferences sometimes. It's a cast. It's museum quality.
Yeah.
You're not going to see one anywhere else like it. But it is a cast.
Yeah, I can imagine carrying that on your onboard luggage.
Matter of fact, you can order these casts. We were given permission to make cast of the infant elongated skull.
Oh, really?
We were given permission to make cast of one of the large elongated skulls that you've seen in Watchers 8. There's a stone effigy that Senior One found that looks like an elongated skull. We got permission to cast that. And then these 47-inch human femurs that Joe Taylor makes, all those are available. If you're interested, I know Joe's website, I just plug it real quick. I'm sure, he wouldn't mind, but it's mountblanco.com, Mount Blanco, MTBLANCO, mountblanco.com. And you can order any of those skulls. Those casts are available. And look, you're not going to find a cast like that anywhere else. Yeah. And these are limited casts. They're not going to be, Joe's not going to be doing them forever. So if you're interested in things like this, I don't get anything for this. It's just Joe's a friend of mine. We dug dinosaurs for 20 years together, and I know his work. He used to work at La Brea Tar Pits in California. And look, if you love saber-toothed cat skulls, and you want one that came out of the La Brea Tar Pits in California from the 1940s, Joe has.
I'm looking at one right now.
Oh,
I'm actually on the site. Wow.
Anywhere else, you can't. So if you're interested in stuff like this, like I am, I have all this stuff in my office now. I'm looking at my saber-toothed cat skull now. But yeah, it's great stuff.
Well, it's fascinating because it is us. It is our basic heritage where we came from, and it's just like the Star Child. I've heard, like I said, the old Art Bell days and the old interviews and the fact that you can hold one in your hand, a replica of it, but you can actually appreciate the size of it and compare.
Yeah. Well, you can. We got permission. I say we, but Joe Taylor got permission to mold and cast the Star Child skull. Yeah. Those are available, but Chase Kleske is wrapping up her investigation as new as from a clean slate. This isn't taking up the research in the mantle of Lloyd Pye. This has to be an independent, fresh start. And that's why Chase Kleske was asked to take up this investigation. And I think she's nearing completion of that. It's taken her all over to osteologists and forensic osteologists and medical doctors, myself, other people who studied the skull, scans, and I mean everything you can throw at it, because in the end, this is going to be a conclusion and it's going to be definitive, and then that'll be it. So I'm just as anxious as everyone else is for Chase to wrap up her investigation. Yeah, you can check it out. Chase Kleske has a blog about it. You may have to Google it, Chase Kleske and the Star Child skull. It should come up. But there's a special blog. You can keep up with the latest research.
Unbelievable. So what are you doing these days besides saving people's lives, and what's on what projects are you working on?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm gearing up to go back to Israel in December. This is probably the most important excavation that I'll have ever undertaken. I don't say that lightly, because I'm going to be at the Dead Sea Caves in Qumran, where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1946, and over the next 10 years through 1956 in 11 different caves. I'm not going to be in any of those caves because those have been excavated, but in that region, there is another some 30 caves. We've got permission to excavate one of these caves. I'm going to be on a team with Dr. Randall Price, who you saw in Finding Noah, as well, and Bruce Hall. We're going to be excavating at a undisclosed site in Palestinian territory in Qumran. We do have the necessary permits from the Israeli Antiquity Authorities and the Palestinians to be there. Dr. Randall Price has been the only Westerner archaeologist to excavate the Qumran Plateau for the last 10 years. That work has been completed and published now. But this is a cave that's been collapsed. We know it's got some wings in the back that's never been excavated. So the implications are could be huge. There's a very good possibility that from the Temple Scroll mentions that there is other artifacts from the temple, perhaps even other manuscripts that they hid in another cave that matches the very description found in the Temple Scroll that came out of Cave 11. So the implications could be pretty huge if we find something. And the reason, this has not been explored because the ceiling is caved in. There's a lot of dirt we got to move out of the way. So it's a very small elite team. I'm one of about 12 people in the world that's going to be able to excavate in this particular cave. It's huge. This is huge. I blink and I have to pinch myself because I'm gearing up to do this excavation in December, and this is probably going to be the most important archaeological investigation I've ever been on. The Dead Sea Scrolls are considered the greatest archaeological find from the 20th century. That still stands today. It vetted every book of the Old Testament with the exception of the book of Esther, because they didn't find the book of Esther, but multiple copies of Psalms, multiple copies of the Great Scroll of Isaiah. I've got a complete replica of the Great Scroll of Isaiah here in my office. Genesis, every book of the Old Testament, vetted every book of the Old Testament with the exception of the book of Esther. And that closes about a 2,000-year gap of history. It's huge. The implications could be huge. So this the fact that I just got invited, it's amazing. There are other archaeologists who would give their right arm to be going in this spot.
Absolutely. Wasn't the Dead Sea Scrolls, were they not discovered by like a shepherd by mistake? Wasn't he there with his sheep or whatever, his flock, and had to get out of the storm and climbed up to the cave? What is the history? What's the story behind the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls they were incidentally found by two veteran young shepherds who were herding some goats. One of the goats got up in one of these caves, and he took a rock to throw up in the cave to kind of spook it out. He heard the sound of cracking pottery, and he went up to investigate, and that's how the Cave 1 and Cave 2 of the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Over the next 10 years, from 1946 to 1956, these caves were then excavated with other manuscripts that had been discovered. Hundreds of manuscripts, about 15,000 fragments or so, some over 800 separate scrolls have been identified. They can be divided up in two different categories of biblical and non-biblical manuscripts. There's, like I said, there's multiple copies of the book of Isaiah, some 30 copies of the book of Psalms, prophecies by the by Daniel and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. It's just unreal. There are writings that are not just in Hebrew, but are in Aramaic. Aramaic was the common language of the Jews the last 2 centuries. There was, the book of Enoch. I mentioned the book of Enoch earlier. That was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're talking in the area of Qumran, and they were most likely written by the Essenes from the period of about 200 BC to just before the destruction of Jerusalem by Titus in 70 AD. The Essenes were mentioned by Flavius Josephus, and we think they are the writers of the scrolls. They were a strict Torah-observant, messianic, apocalyptic kind of Jewish sect that separated themselves out from Jerusalem and went to the Qumran area, and they were led by a priest called the Teacher of Righteousness, and so they basically separated themselves off from the priesthood in Jerusalem, and it's amazing that the Copper Scroll, for crying out loud, was found in Cave 3. The Copper Scroll is immensely important because this lists some 64 underground hiding places throughout Israel that are deposits that are to contain certain amounts of silver, gold, and other manuscripts. These are believed to be part of the treasures from the temple at Jerusalem, and they were hid away for safekeeping. So the Copper Scroll reads like a X marks the spots map.
Wow.
It reads, go here, walk so many paces, go to this marker, dig down, you're going to hit, 30 talents of gold. That's exactly, paraphrasing, that's exactly how it reads. So it's amazing. I already mentioned the Temple Scroll in Cave 11. So a lot of neat things are coming out of those. Yeah,
I'm reading like one of the examples in the ruin that is in the valley of Angkor under the steps, with the entrance at the east, a distance of 40 cubits, a strong box of silver and its vessels with a weight of 17 talents.
There you go. That's a Copper Scroll.
That's wow.
If you go on my fundraiser site, I have a fundraiser site because I need some help getting over to Israel to this excavation. I can't do this out of pocket.
Sure.
I'm about halfway there, but I do need some help getting to the finish line. And I got some perks on fundraiser for those who want to give. It's fundraiser, and fundraiser is spelled with as RAZR, fundraiser, RAZR.com, and it's / Dead Sea Cave 2016, Dead Sea Cave 2016. And if you click on the updates, you'll see there's updates, and it'll tell you all about the campaign, how much has been raised, how much I need to go. I'm about halfway there. But on one of the updates, you'll see the updates from the 1960s where they found this at one of the caves. It's called the Cave of Treasures, and some 400 artifacts came out of this one cave, I'm talking like 5 crowns, 100 scepters, all these artifacts that came out of there. That some of them are bronze and copper, and they dated these artifacts from the straw that was wrapped around them, and some of these artifacts to 6,000 years ago. So this is way, way, way before the Essenes. But you'll see a 6,000-year-old crown found in the Dead Sea Cave. If you go and read that update on my fundraiser site, fundraiser.com/Dead Sea Cave 2016, you'll see that update. It's incredible, the artifacts that came out of this one cave alone. It's called the Cave of Treasures. Then you got the Cave of Skulls, where they found a bunch of skulls. Yeah. You got another cave called the Cave of Spices. You got other caves, that are around there too. So the potential is huge to find other manuscripts and other artifacts. So this is the implications are certainly very important for the land of Israel. Very important to the Christian faith. Mm-hmm. We just don't know what we're going to find. It's all buried over with dirt, debris. So we just don't know what we're going to get into. We may get in there, excavate everything, and may not find anything. That's just part of the reality of archaeology. Yeah. But we may get in there and maybe find another cave of treasures. Yeah. So it's huge. This dig is so huge right now. Only 12 people. I'm one of the 12 in the world that gets to go into this cave, and man, it's great. So that's what I'm gearing up for in December. I'll be gone to Israel for about 3 weeks. We're going to be doing some filming as well, going over into Jordan, into the land of the Nabateans, and to see Petra, and hopefully in 6 months or so down the road, I can we'll have a film or something for to come out and to show people what but my vision is to get off the ancient, to get off the beaten trail of the tourism trail, and get off and show you the ancient sites, show you Gilgal, show you where the Raphaims were in the biblical timeline, and actually take you there.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. So there's a lot that we're going to be doing. So after this dig, I'm going to stay probably another week. I'm going to be teaming up, just like L.A. and Richard Shaw has teamed up in the past, and others like Steve Quayle and Timothy Alvarino. Ty Towers and I, who's a multi-award-winning, Emmy award-winning, and Tony award-winning producer, is going to team up with me, and he's going to meet me in Israel. Incidentally, I can't even get him on the dig, and he's, it's so protected. Yeah. But we're going to meet up, and after the dig, we're going to spend a week, and we're going to take you to these sites. So it's going to be some great stuff coming down the road. But wow. I need help to get to the finish line to make it happen. The doors open. The invite's there. Every hurdle has been cleared. I just need to get there. So go to the fundraiser site. It's also linked up at aaronjudkins.com. Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? We'll talk offline. So, because this is just, the reason, look, I have been blessed with this show, and I have been blessed with the good fortune of having guests like you on the show. And I think there's a reason for that is, everything happens. There's no such thing as coincidence, and God does not roll dice, as Albert Einstein would say. So, we'll definitely talk. And of course, we'll get all your books out there and everything as well to get those promoted, because I'm sure that helps you. Helps along.
Every bit helps. I've had people donate as little as $5 or $10, and they said, "You know what? This is all we can give, but maybe it'll buy your lunch one day."
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those small ones. Those $5 and $10. Those add up. Every bit counts. Mm-hmm. And for me, this is so huge that that, I just didn't know, I didn't know how I was going to get to Turkey, but it worked out. I didn't know how I was going to do a lot of things I've been able to do, but it's worked out in the end. This is another one where I said, okay, I'm there. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm there. Yeah. So part of it is just acting, in belief that I'm going to get there. And like I said, since I've been, in this campaign, I'm almost halfway there to my goal. Mm-hmm. And I've got several more weeks here, so I've got time.
You need what, 15 because I'm on your site, and it's the Patreon site is the one that it's taken me to.
No, not the Patreon site. It's go to the fundraiser site. So if you go to aaronjudkins.com, and you click on news, there's a news tab up there. Click on news, and it'll take you to the fundraiser site, and it'll tell you all about the Dead Sea Scroll Cave project. And then look for anyone who gives a donation. I just did this the other day. The site went live. For anyone who gives any amount towards the campaign, there's a members-only section at my website. For anyone who donates any amount, doesn't matter what it is, you will get, it's password protected, you will get the password. And on that members-only section page of my website, I've got some things only for members who's donated available to you. So you'll get that password emailed out to you. I've got perks for people who donate at different levels. There's different things you can go on there and look at that. Mm-hmm. I've thought about adding some other perks that aren't on there yet for people who want to give higher donations. There's a couple of things I may add on there, but I haven't yet. But the site's live, so if you donate any amount, then you'll get the password to the members only section. And there's some freebies up there that I just got for y'all guys as a thank you for helping me get there and following my work. Man, this is so important for me, and I really appreciate you having me on, and all your listeners, following my work over the years. And man, I've been blessed to be able to go and do these things. The search for Noah's Ark in Turkey and finding Noah. People ask me all the time, I'm sure you just made a killing off of finding Noah. I didn't make one dime off of finding Noah. Yeah. That just is the truth of the matter. I was privileged to be in the film. We were going anyway, film or no film. I didn't do it for the film. Certainly didn't do it for the money, because no one got paid. As a matter of fact, the investors never got all their money back, and it's still working on that. So I never made any money off the film. I don't make money off the sales. There's nothing there that's been profitable. So I've never made a dime off of Finding Noah. My work is through grassroots, and it's through my books. It's through some of the other DVDs that I have that I've made, such as On the Trail Across Peru and Bolivia, and one of the documentaries I produced called The Los Lunas Mystery Stone, the Hidden Mountain Paleo-Hebrew in the New Mexico Desert. That's one of my first ones that I've done. So that's how I've been able to do this. And sometimes, like I said earlier, it's just who you know. Mm-hmm. And so these opportunities don't come up every day. Some of them are once in a lifetime. There's not going to be a season 2 on this, so this is going to be pretty staggering, expedition that I'm going to be on. So thank you all you guys for following my work.
Yeah, we'll definitely get the word out and make sure that that we help you with this, because I think this is, how do I say this? We waste so much money. I mean, on DirecTV and all the things that are supposedly supposed to bring us happiness and joy. And I'll tell you, to me, there's nothing more important than furthering our own evolution. And in order to do that, that is actually, we have to dig into the past and figure out where we came from. And I'm going to blow through this break too, because I want to finish this up and everything. So Doctor, you have my commitment. We'll talk offline and everything. But I know that you'll be getting some support from the Norton family in your efforts. and stuff, because we think it's very important, and it it's amazing. Who knows? You might find something. You just have to go to that on the east. Remember, it's on the east side of the stairwell.
Right.
And it's only 40 cubits, not 39. But no, right. I think it's cool what you do, and it's just amazing, and I'm so happy that you answered your email and decided to come onto the show and everything, because I tell people what makes a great show is great guests, and you are definitely up there with.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to come on and talk about things like this.
Yeah.
I really have a passion about doing this. I don't try to convince people of anything. I just try to show them the evidence.
Absolutely.
And that's what I hope to do with this new project at the Dead Sea Cave.
Absolutely. And we love having you. And I know you took not a big risk, but you took a risk coming onto the show, in the sense that we're not a coast to coast. We're not a, Art Bell. Well, no one will ever replace the great Art Bell. But and the fact that we're not even a Jimmy Church, right? But yet you took time, and for that we are eternally grateful. And we're growing, though. We're getting the numbers. Our shows are getting up there to 2,000 to 3,000 listeners now, which is
wonderful.
Yeah, so we're getting, and we've only been a month out of the can. So that's to say, and I do get it. A lot of people think that we make money here. And you don't. It's all self-funded. So I get it. I understand and everything. I have been blessed with a lot of good things in a few months, and I think part of that is that we need to pass that on. So, but please make sure that you send me all the links in an email and everything for all your sites, so that we can get those updated. I do have your Amazon page up, and I will make sure those books are included. And then I will also reach out. Are you going to be around tomorrow?
I will.
Okay. All right. I'll reach out to you via email. We'll chat, and we'll see what we can do to help you knock that goal down. And how many more weeks do you have before you have to wheels up?
Well, the campaign, I need everything by the end of October. I've stretched out the campaign to December, but yeah, it's best if I have it all done in October, so I don't have to worry about it,
Sure.
Waiting to the last minute. So
Okay.
The end of October is what I'm giving myself, but if I have to, I can stretch it out to December.
So September, October. Okay. All right. We'll
So about, another 6 or 8 weeks here is what I've got. So plenty of time.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we don't want to tell people that, because we don't want people to wait for the last minute.
I'm halfway there, so it just a few more of those 5s and 10s.
Sure.
Those always help. And
sure.
I
normally don't solicit, but I'll tell all my listeners, if you guys, this is a program, this is a project that you need to get behind, because this will possibly could answer a lot of the questions that we have. And it is very important with this research that you're doing, and the fact that you're going over to Israel and possibly uncovering one of the remaining sites that have the rest of the answers for us, biblical answers, I should say, and everything. Because there are a lot of books in the Bible that were never published, and it would be fascinating it would be incredible if that's what you discover is a lot of those books. And then there you go. I mean, I think that would be tremendous in furthering a lot of people's beliefs, and who knows, maybe answering a lot of questions that we have. But
absolutely, that's what I do.
Yep, I appreciate it. So, Dr. Aaron, I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule. Hey, be safe in your day job, and thank you for your service. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's thank you. Don't hear that every day, but I really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, people don't. I was shocked when I didn't know you were. So you're a flight medic, right? Flight nurse. Right. Yeah. Dangerous job, man. You guys are out there putting it on the line all the time. I've lost 3 friends in this industry already. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a rough one. It can be tough. It can be dangerous, but
I learned a long time ago I'm not going to live my life on the couch. I'm going to get out there and live. One of my mottos is, every man dies, not every man really lives.
That's right.
So
that's right. I actually, I just saw that at the bottom of your at the bottom of your page here. That's exactly what you have down there. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. God bless you. And be safe in your endeavors. And like I said, we will definitely be in touch. You can consider a Norton, the Norton family will definitely be a Patreon for you and your work and your efforts. And
thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks for having me on.
Take care.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Yep. So there you go. Dr. Aaron Judkins joining us live. The Maverick. Fascinating stuff. Like I said, the backstory behind Finding Noah, I watched that video and everything, and it was just incredible. I did not know the backstory. And to have him on here, and think about the story that we might get from the Dead Sea cave expedition that he's going to be going on. Who knows? We might uncover some hidden mysteries. And that's why it's very important. Like I said, we spend so much time and money and energy on things that really don't matter. And this is something that absolutely matters. This is something this is our history. This is not American history. This is not, white history. This is not black history. This is not Mexican history. This is our history, humanity's history. And it is so important that we get behind projects like this. So when you go out and you drink your Starbucks, in my case, Jimmy Horton's the best, cheapest coffee you'll ever drink. If you're within 500 miles of a Jimmy Horton's, I highly recommend you go out of your way, get yourself a cup of coffee and a Danish. But when you're out getting that croissant or that Danish or whatever, think about our good friend, Dr. Aaron Judkins, and what he could do with that money. He can you could help shape human history. And as he said, he's not asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, $5 here, $10 there. I think you guys can possibly come up with that. And I don't solicit very, very little on the show. I don't even solicit for the show, for our own show, because I'm a firm believer that God will take us where he wants us to be. But I'm telling you guys, if you are out there and you are hearing the show and everything, get behind this project. The best way to do it is you go out to Aaron Judkins, you go out to his page. Let me show you. We'll have links out there. It's Aaron, and it's AARONJUDKINS.com. And you click on the news section. And within the news, you have a section that comes up and says current projects under fundraiser, and you'll see that, and you'll see what he's doing. The other thing, too, is that if you haven't watched the movie Finding Noah, that's great. You can get it on Prime and also, I believe, on Netflix. A good one. And after hearing his testimony, PKK at gunpoint. That is incredible. I have to say, he is, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, he is the modern day Indiana Jones. And what a renaissance man. And when he's not doing archaeological digs, he is saving people's lives as a medic, as a helicopter medic. Wow. What a renaissance man. But enough of that. It's time that we move on. We're going to take a quick break here. I know that for you guys, we're going to come back. We will, if you have calls or anything like that you want to give me a shout, you're more than welcome to through the chat room, because that's all we're monitoring tonight. I will fire up the listener line. So it's TMO listener, TMO space listener on Skype. And we will take your calls for the next 30 minutes or so. If you have any anything you want to talk about, go ahead and call in to that line. We're going to, like I said, we're going to take a quick break. When I get back from the break, we will have open lines and allow you to ask whatever question you might have. There'll be open lines, open topics, and we'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. Join us on the web at www.themidnightocean.com.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That's right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean radio show and podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton, and it is live. That's right. We are live. What an interview. What a show with Dr. Aaron Judkins. Man versus archaeology. You know, when you talk with individuals, you know where their heart is pretty quickly. I don't know if you know, but I do. I can figure that out. And I love the fact, kind of like Lloyd Auerbach yesterday, you can hear that they're, just by talking to them, that they're not in it for the fame or fortune. They're not in it to be on TV. That was not their intentions. They're not in it to make shows, reality TV shows. They're in it for the science. The other thing too is that, as the good doctor said in one of the segments, there is that he doesn't need to prove or disprove the Bible. It'll stand up on its own. And he just does the research, does the archaeological work, which is commendable. And like I said, I don't solicit. I don't think you've ever heard me solicit even for my show. I might ask for someone to help us to boost our count, to get our subscribers up. I might ask for that, but I don't solicit for money, because I know that we offer value to our listeners, but we don't offer value to our advertisers yet. We don't have a big enough market. We know that. So I don't even bother. I try to be efficient with my communication. So I don't want to junk it up just yet. Yeah, I mean, the fact that, could we use a few? Yeah, absolutely. But we'll be fine. God provides. God provides. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Now, if you would like to give me a call, feel free to give us a shout. The chat line is open. You can type in TMO listener. That's TMO listener in Skype. If you don't have Skype, you can download it. And we would love to do that. So we're going to keep that open for the next 15 minutes. If we have no takers, then I'm out of here. No, we've got so much work to do still. But I'd love to hear from you. But if you would like to talk with me for the next 15 minutes, please feel free. The lines are open. All you have to do is go TMO listener in Skype, send the request, I will approve it, and we can communicate. So tomorrow is going to be one of those interesting days. We're going to have a guest on the show, and it's going to be a fun show. Well, not really. It's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be an enlightening show. I don't ever want to say it's going to be a fun show, but it will be a show nonetheless. Now, what's going to be interesting about this one is that I'm going to have to do, this one is going to have to be pre-recorded, but I will be manning the chat line and everything during tomorrow's show. So we're going to pre-record this show And then, like I said, we will be manning the chat line, which will be kind of cool because it'll give me the opportunity to kind of hang out with you guys in chat during the show, and we can talk about different things as the show is going on. But what is going to be neat is that we're going to be talking about alien abductions and UFO ET disclosures with our good friend and guest, Gerald Artisan. So he's going to be joining us talking about that. We have to do a pre-recorded show because he is a little bit under the weather, but he still wants to join and participate, be part of the show. And that is pretty cool that he is willing to, I don't want to say forego his health, but he will willing to do an interview, as I say. Do apologize. I get distracted way too easily. Yep. So Gerard Artisan will be joining us tomorrow, and look forward to the conversation that we have. And the other thing too is he's not in the States. I think that has something to do with the pre-recorded as well. We are starting to reach out to other countries, and you're going to see that. That's the nice thing about us and this show and this thing called the internet. It allows us to communicate with other individuals in other countries and to have them participate and share their experiences. It's a great big world out there. It's time we start extending and going across the borders. There's nothing wrong with feeling proud of who you are and what country you live in, but there's also nothing wrong with talking to other people in other countries. I find it completely fascinating that we have this opportunity, this medium to do that. How else would you learn the backstory behind finding Noah and the Peruvian skulls and Star Child? That is what is so cool about our show. Is, yeah, you know, we get the mainstream stories, but I want to hear the backstory. I want to hear the sitting around the campfire story. And that's what we get when we have a conversation. And I hope you enjoyed our conversations. If you'd like to join into the conversation, please join us at TMO Listener. That's TMO Listener on the Skype line. Love to hear from you. If you are joining us for YouTube, if this is the first time you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. That is the most important button you'll hit tonight or tomorrow, because that helps us get the message out to you. Of course, you can always use Facebook, the Midnight Ocean, or you can type in Midnight Listeners to join a group of fellow Midnight Ocean listeners. And you can always find us on Twitter, follow us there. I will not spam you. The only thing we will send out is things that pertain to the show or the topic of the show or whatever we're going to talk about that night. So if there is no takers on the Skype line, I am going to take this time to say thank you. Thanks to our very special guest, Dr. Aaron Judkinson, for joining us. Judkins. It's getting late. for joining us tonight as he talks about his endeavors and his participation in finding Noah and also the Peruvian skulls and the skull, the Star Child skull, and the research he did there. Great stuff. Great stuff. And just for good measure, here we go. One more time. This is actually a promo that he put together. This is awesome. I don't have guests that put promos together very often for us, but this was impressive.
Tonight, the Midnight Ocean digs deep into the world of modern archaeology
What will you decide to believe? The evidence in the Bible?
with the Maverick archaeologist Aaron Judkins.
This will change everything.
He's been all over the world.
Everything we have been taught in history.
He's dug in some of the deepest holes and climbed atop some of the highest mountains,
We're the only team in 3 years has permission to be on ARS today.
leading excavations that prove the biblical timeline,
When the Ark is revealed, it will be a testament frozen in time.
exhuming evidence that decimates evolution.
If this is true, man and dinosaur were created on day number 6.
Some of the most fascinating stories of exploration you'll ever hear.
It'll change geology.
An in-depth interview
It'll change biology and zoology.
with Aaron Judkins.
It'll change all the ologies.
Live tonight on the Midnight Ocean.
We don't get that in church. They don't teach you that stuff. Let the evidence speak for themselves. Don't tell people what to believe. Show them.
Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.